The Omega-4 relay had existed for 50,000 years, a monument to Prothean engineering and Reaper deception. Beyond it lay the Galactic core, uncharted, lethal, and home to the collectors who had been abducting human colonies for months. But on this day, in the lawless stations orbiting the relay's outer markers, something arrived that predated even the ancient cycles. Something that would make the Reapers recalculate their equations. The dimensional rift tore through reality like claws through silk. Omega Station's lower wards erupted in chaos as impossible energy signatures screamed across every sensor. The tier manifested in Sector 7, a warehouse district controlled by the Eclipse mercenary group, and what emerged made hardened killers drop their weapons and stare. Two women materialized in a cascade of fire and lightning, one with white hair and eyes crackling with electrical fury, the other wreathed in flames that burned without heat, suspended in the air like a goddess of ancient myth. Storm hit the deck hard, her body screaming from dimensional transit. Around her, the warehouse atmosphere responded to her instinctive panic. Wind howled where no wind should exist, static electricity arced between metal crates, and the temperature plummeted 15 degrees in seconds. She forced herself to breathe, to center, to remember her training. Control. Always control. Jean Grey floated 3 feet above the ground, eyes blazing with cosmic fire. The Phoenix Force roared through her consciousness, disoriented and furious at being torn from its native reality. Through her telepathic senses, she felt thousands of minds pressing against her awareness, human, Asari, Turian, Solarian, Krogan, species she had no names for. The psychic noise was deafening. Jean. Storm's voice cut through the chaos, grounded and certain. Focus on my mind. My voice. Come back. The flames flickered. Jean's feet touched metal flooring. Around them, Eclipse mercenaries were recovering from their shock, weapons rising. Identify yourselves. An Asari commando stepped forward, biotic energy crackling around her fists, a mass effect field that made Jean's telepathy itch with wrongness. This is Eclipse territory. The warehouse wall exploded inward. Storm whirled as armored figures swarmed through the breach, insectoid, chitinous, moving with disturbing synchronization. Her weather sense screamed warnings about their bioelectric signatures. Wrong. Profoundly wrong. Collectors, someone screamed. The Eclipse mercs opened fire. Mass accelerator rounds tore through the air at a fraction of light speed. Storm raised her hands instinctively, calling wind to deflect the projectiles, but the sealed environment resisted her power. She managed to create turbulence that disrupted aim, but it was like trying to command weather through thick glass. A collector drone locked onto her with insect-like precision. Its weapon hummed with particle beam energy. Lightning answered. The bolt that erupted from Storm's hands was pure and terrible, channeling the station's electrical grid through her body. The collector exploded in a shower of chitin and circuitry. Two more behind it convulsed as chain lightning arced between their shields. Assuming direct control. The voice was wrong, layered, ancient, speaking through a collector's mouth with terrible intelligence. The possessed drone's eyes blazed yellow as it turned toward Jean, and she felt something brush against her mind with crushing weight. Genetic structure anomalous. Psychic capability beyond parameters. Acquiring target. The Phoenix Force responded before Jean could stop it. Crimson flame erupted from her body in a sphere of absolute power. Collectors caught in the blast simply ceased, not burned, not destroyed, unmade at the molecular level. The possessed drone staggered backward, and through the psychic connection, Jean felt something massive recoil in surprise. What was that? The voice in her mind was shocked, calculating. What are you? Run! Jean gasped, grabbing Storm's arm. Her friend was already moving, pulling them toward a service corridor as more collectors poured through the breach. Behind them, Eclipse mercs were being swarmed by seeker swarms, floating insects that paralyzed victims with brutal efficiency. They burst into Omega's main thoroughfare, and Storm stopped dead. The station stretched before them like a massive cylinder, buildings and walkways defying gravity along the interior walls. Neon signs in a dozen alien scripts advertised everything from weapons to flesh. Crowds of every species she'd seen in the warehouse mines scattered as warning klaxons wailed. "Ororo," Jean breathed, "where are we?" Before Storm could answer, the crowd parted with practiced speed. A figure emerged, blue-skinned, elegant, radiating authority that needed no announcement. Flanked by guards in blood-red armor, she moved with predatory grace toward the two mutants. "Well." Arya Tlok's voice was silk over steel. "That's new." Storm met the Aseri's gaze with equal measure, straightening despite the pain of dimensional transit still racking her body. Lightning played across her knuckles, a warning and a statement. "We mean no harm to your station. We were displaced." Displaced. Arya's eyes narrowed, taking in Storm's white hair, Jean's still glowing eyes, the impossible power readings her guards' omni-tools were surely screaming about. "You create a weather system inside a sealed environment, unmake collectors at the molecular level, and call it displaced. I call it the most interesting thing to happen on Omega in years." A massive explosion rocked the station. Through the viewport, Storm could see collector cruiser weapons tearing into Omega's outer hull. Ships were scrambling to launch, and the station's defense turrets were lighting up the void with mass accelerator fire. "The collectors don't usually attack Omega directly," Arya continued, her voice deadly calm. "They prefer isolated colonies. Softer targets." Her gaze locked onto Jean with predatory intensity. "They came here for you." Jean felt the truth in those words through her telepathy, and felt something else. Hidden beneath Arya's confident exterior was genuine concern. This attack was unprecedented. Dangerous. And these two strangers had brought it to her doorstep. "Then we should leave," Storm said firmly. "We won't endanger your people." "Too late for that, Weather Witch." Arya gestured to her guards. "The collectors are already here. The question is whether you're powerful enough to be worth the trouble, or whether I should throw you out an airlock before they tear my station apart looking for you." The Phoenix Force stirred in Jean's chest, responding to the threat. She forced it down, but crimson light leaked from her eyes. "We don't want to fight you." "Good." Arya smiled, sharp and dangerous. "Because if you want to survive in this galaxy, you're going to need someone who understands how things work. And in the Terminus systems, I am the law." She turned, expecting to be followed. "Come. We have a collector problem to solve. Then you can explain what the hell you are and why every sensor on this station says you shouldn't exist." Storm and Jean exchanged glances, that silent communication of years fighting together, years of friendship forged in the fires of the X-Men's impossible missions. They were far from home, in a galaxy that ran on technology they didn't understand, with powers that didn't quite work right. But they'd faced worse together. Storm nodded once. Jean took her hand, drawing strength from her oldest friend's presence. The Phoenix whispered promises of power and destruction, but Jean held firm to one thought: control. Find Charles. Get home. They followed the pirate queen of Omega into the depths of the station, unaware that their arrival had already been noticed by forces far more dangerous than mercenary lords. In the void beyond the Omega Nebula, ancient machines stirred. Calculations were revised. Parameters adjusted. The cycle had introduced a variable it could not account for. And Harbinger was very, very interested. Aria's headquarters occupied the heart of Omega, a converted warehouse transformed into a throne room of neon and steel. From her elevated platform, the Pirate Queen could observe every screen displaying station feeds, docking bays, market districts, the ongoing firefight with collector forces in the lower wards. Storm studied the displays with tactical precision. The collectors were withdrawing, pulling back to their cruiser with methodical efficiency. They'd taken casualties, significant casualties if the body count scrolling across one screen was accurate, but their retreat was calculated, not panicked. They were probing, she said quietly. Testing our capabilities. Arya glanced at her with newfound respect. You fought before. Real combat, not the posturing that passes for conflict in council space. More times than I can count. Storm's voice carried weight of centuries of mutation fear, sentinel attacks, battles against enemies who wanted her people dead simply for existing. They'll be back. Better prepared. Let them come. Jean's voice was distant, her eyes tracking something no one else could see. Her telepathy was still struggling to filter the overwhelming psychic noise of Omega's population, but she'd latched onto something specific. Something that felt like kinship. Aurora, there's someone here. Someone whose mind feels like you're drowning in power you can't control. A woman's voice, raw and aggressive, cut through the room. Storm's hands crackled with electricity as a figure emerged from the shadows of Arya's throne room, human, covered in tattoos that glowed with biotic energy, shaved head and eyes that had seen too much violence. She moved like a caged animal, all coiled fury and barely restrained destruction. Subject 0, Arya said with amusement. I should have known you'd sense them. Jack, the woman corrected, her gaze locked on Jean with disturbing intensity. And yeah, I felt her the second she arrived. Hard not to when someone lights up the psychic spectrum like a goddamn supernova. She stepped closer, biotic energy crackling around her fists. So what are you? Some kind of a seri-human hybrid experiment? Another Cerberus project? Jean flinched at the venom in that last word. Through their telepathic connection, she caught fragments of Jack's memories, a childhood of torture, experimentation, being treated as a weapon rather than a person. The pain was familiar. Horribly familiar. We're not experiments, Storm said firmly, positioning herself between Jack and Jean. We're mutants. Our abilities are natural, genetic evolution. Bullshit. Jack's voice was flat. Humans don't have biotics naturally. You need ESO exposure in utero, implants, training. Nobody just wakes up throwing lightning around like. She stopped. Stared at Storm's hands where electricity danced between her fingers without implants, without the telltale glow of biotic energy. That's not biotics, Jack breathed. What the fuck is that? Evolution, Storm repeated. On our world, some humans are born with extraordinary abilities. We call ourselves mutants. Jean and we were, part of a team dedicated to protecting both humans and mutants from those who would exploit or destroy us. Arya leaned forward on her throne, fingers steepled. Let me guess. Your world didn't appreciate these gifts. Storm's expression hardened. They feared us. Hunted us. Built weapons specifically to kill us. We've spent our lives fighting for the right to exist. Sounds familiar, Jack muttered. She was still staring at Jean, though, and her next words were quieter. That thing inside you. The fire. It's not just power, is it? It's alive. Hungry. Jean met her gaze, and for the first time since arriving, she saw something other than alien strangeness. She saw recognition. Understanding. Yes. It's called the Phoenix Force. It's cosmic. Ancient. And it wants to burn everything. And you're holding it back. Barely. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Arya's guards shifted nervously, hands moving toward weapons. Even Arya herself tensed, though her expression remained carefully neutral. How long? The Pirate Queen asked. I don't know. Jean's voice cracked slightly. The dimensional crossing destabilized it. This galaxy's energy, the element zero, the biotic fields, the sheer density of life, it's like fuel to a fire. The Phoenix feeds on life force, and here, she gestured helplessly at the viewport showing Omega's teeming millions. Here, there's so much life. So many minds. It's getting harder to control. Storm placed a hand on Jean's shoulder, grounding her. We'll find a way. We always do. Touching. Aria's tone was clinical now, calculating. But you've brought a cosmic threat to my station, and the collectors are already hunting you. I need to know whether you're an asset or a problem I need to eliminate. Lightning exploded across Storm's body, her eyes going pure white. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees in an instant, frost forming on metal surfaces. You will not threaten my sister. Jack's biotics flared in response, and Aria's guards raised weapons. The room balanced on a knife's edge of violence, and then Jean moved. She didn't walk. She simply was there, between Storm and Aria, hands raised in supplication. The Phoenix Force blazed in her eyes, but she held it, controlled it, used it to project her voice directly into every mind in the room. Please. We don't want to fight you. We're lost. Alone. And we need help. The telepathic sending carried emotional weight that words couldn't match, exhaustion, fear, determination, and beneath it all, the howling hunger of something vast and terrible that Jean Grey was sacrificing everything to contain. Aria's expression shifted fractionally. A telepath. Genuine telepathy, not a Sari mind melding. She studied Jean with new appreciation, and new caution. The Asari will lose their minds when they find out about you. They've built an entire culture around being the galaxy's psychic elite. The Asari can wait, a new voice interrupted. Every head turned to the entrance where a figure stood silhouetted against Omega's neon glow. Human, military bearing, N7 armor that Storm's enhanced vision recognized as combat-scarred and well-used. Flanking her were two others, a woman in Cerberus colors and a Turian whose subvocals rumbled with barely contained aggression. Commander Shepard, Aria said with genuine surprise. I heard you were dead. I got better. Shepard moved into the room with the confidence of someone who'd stared down impossible odds and won. Her eyes, calculating, intelligent, harder than they should be for someone so young, swept over Storm and Jean with tactical assessment. And I heard two unknowns with impossible power levels just fought off collectors in your station. Since I'm hunting collectors, that makes them my business. Miranda Lawson, the Cerberus officer, was already scanning them with her Omni tool. Genetic structure is impossible. These readings can't be right. They're showing non-human DNA sequences, but they present as baseline human. And the energy signatures, she looked up sharply. You're generating enough power to level a city block. Each. Great, Gurus muttered. Just what we needed. More people who can accidentally kill everyone in the room. Shepard ignored them both, her attention fixed on Storm with uncomfortable intensity. I'm Commander Shepard. I died stopping a Reaper attack on the Citadel 2 years ago. Cerberus brought me back to fight the collectors who are abducting human colonies. If you're enemies of the collectors, we should talk. Cerberus. Jean's voice was cold. She'd touched Jack's memories, seen what that organization did to children in the name of human advancement. You work for people who experiment on their own species. I work for humanity's survival, Shepard corrected, her tone brooking no argument. And right now, entire colonies are disappearing while the Council pretends nothing's wrong. If you've got power that can hurt collectors, I need to know if you're willing to use it. Storm and Jean exchanged glances again. Storm saw the exhaustion in her friend's eyes, felt the tremor in her telekinetic field as the Phoenix Force pulled at Jean's control. They needed answers. Needed to understand this galaxy's rules, its technology, how to get home. But they also knew what it meant to be used as weapons. To have their powers seen as tools rather than parts of who they were. We'll help you fight the collectors, Storm said carefully. But we're not soldiers in your war, Commander. We're not joining Cerberus, and we're not taking orders. Shepard's expression didn't change. Fair enough. But if we're going to work together, I need to know what I'm dealing with. What you can do. What you are. She paused. And whether that thing I'm seeing in Gray's eyes is going to eat my crew if it gets hungry. The Phoenix Force roared at the implied threat, but Jean held firm. I would die before I let the Phoenix hurt innocent people. We're X-Men, Commander. We protect those who can't protect themselves, even when they hate us for it. X-Men, Miranda repeated, her Omni tool still recording data. That designation doesn't appear in any database. Not Alliance, not Citadel, not even classified Cerberus files. Because we're not from your databases, Storm said quietly. We're not from your galaxy at all. Silence fell across Aria's throne room. Even the Pirate Queen looked genuinely surprised. Explain, Shepard demanded. Jean closed her eyes, gathering her strength. When she opened them again, the Phoenix fire was dimmer, more controlled. We're from another dimension. Another reality. The Phoenix Force tore a hole between worlds, and we came through. We don't know how to get back. We don't know your technology, your politics, or your rules. She looked at each person in the room. But we know how to fight. And if these collectors are abducting people, we won't stand by and let it happen. Shepard studied them for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay. That's the craziest thing I've heard since I learned the Reapers were real, and I've heard some insane things. She turned to Aria. I need a private meeting with them. Your office. Take the conference room, Aria said, waving a hand. But whether which, Phoenix. A word of advice in this galaxy, power makes you a target. And trust me, you just painted targets on your backs the size of dreadnoughts. Storm met her gaze evenly. We've been targets our entire lives. We're still here. Then you'll fit right into the Terminus systems. Aria's smile was sharp. Welcome to Omega. Try not to burn it down. As Shepard led them toward the conference room, Jean felt the Phoenix Force pulse hungrily. Through the viewport, she could see the collector cruiser withdrawing into the nebula's depths. But she could also feel something else, a vast, cold intelligence watching from the darkness between stars. And it was very, very interested in what the Phoenix Force represented. Jean, Storm's thought touched her mind gently. Are you alright? For now, Jean sent back. But Aurora. I think something worse than collectors is coming. The conference room was a stark contrast to Aria's throne room, functional, sealed, and equipped with jamming technology that made Storm's weather sense itch. Shepard sealed the door behind them while Miranda and Gurus took up positions flanking the entrance. Not quite threatening, but not friendly either. Jack had followed them in, uninvited. When Shepard raised an eyebrow, the biotic just shrugged. If Psychic Girl loses control and goes supernova, you'll want me here. I've tanked the Seri matriarchs before. I can handle her. Comforting, Jean muttered, but there was no heat in it. Jack's abrasive honesty was strangely refreshing after years of people tiptoeing around the Phoenix issue. Shepard leaned against the table, arms crossed. All right. Start from the beginning. What's a Phoenix Force, why did it bring you here, and how much danger are we in right now? Storm spoke first, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd briefed world leaders and terrified generals. The Phoenix Force is a cosmic entity, a fundamental force of creation and destruction in our universe. It represents rebirth through fire, the death of the old to make way for the new. It's older than our world, possibly older than our reality itself. And it chose Jean, Miranda said, her Omni tool still recording every word. Why? Because I died. Jean's voice was quiet but steady. I sacrificed myself to save my team. The Phoenix brought me back. Since then, it's been part of me. Sometimes I control it. Sometimes it controls me. She met Shepard's gaze directly. I won't lie to you, Commander. The Phoenix has killed before. Destroyed entire civilizations in other contexts when I lost control. I'm terrified of what it could do here. The room went very still. Gurisa's hand moved fractionally toward his weapon. Defined, destroyed entire civilizations. Planets, Jean said flatly. Stars. The Phoenix can consume suns, reshape matter at the atomic level, manipulate life and death itself. At full power, it's essentially a force of nature made sentient. She paused. But here, something's different. The dimensional crossing weakened our connection. Your element zero, the mass effect fields, they interfere with its manifestation. I'm functioning at maybe 70% capacity. Only 70%, Miranda breathed. And you still unmade collectors at the molecular level. The Phoenix doesn't destroy, Jean corrected. It transforms. Breaks matter down to its base components and rebuilds it. Life into death into life again. That's why the collectors interested, they're Protheans transformed by the Reapers. Perverted life. The Phoenix, she struggled for words. It finds that offensive. Like a desecration of natural order. Storm placed a hand on Jean's arm, grounding her. We need information, Commander. You mentioned Reapers, the Collector's masters. What are they? Why are they abducting colonists? Shepard exchanged glances with Miranda, some silent communication passing between them. Finally, she sighed. This stays in this room. The Council doesn't want anyone knowing the truth, and if word gets out that I'm working with Cerberus, she straightened. The Reapers are ancient machines, sentient warships the size of dreadnoughts. Every 50,000 years, they return to the galaxy and harvest all advanced organic life. They've done this countless times. The Protheans, the species whose technology we base our civilization on, were wiped out in the last cycle. Harvest, Storm repeated, her voice cold. You mean genocide? Systematic extinction, Gurus corrected grimly. They don't just kill. They process organic life into something new. The collectors are proof, they used to be Protheans. Now they're Reaper servants. Jean's face had gone pale. How many? How many cycles? We don't know, Shepard admitted. Dozens, maybe hundreds. The galaxy's been through this apocalypse so many times that even the evidence has been erased. The only reason I know is because I stopped one Reaper, Sovereign, from activating the Citadel's true purpose. It's a trap. A mass relay that would bring the entire Reaper fleet here. The Phoenix force surged in Jean's chest, responding to the existential horror. Cycles of death and rebirth spanning millions of years. Civilizations rising and falling in orchestrated rhythm. It was everything the Phoenix represented, but cold, mechanical, without the transformative beauty that should accompany destruction and renewal. And the collectors? Storm asked, already knowing the answer. Working for the Reapers, Miranda said. Abducting human colonies. Tens of thousands of people already. We don't know why, but Cerberus intelligence suggests they're building something. Something that requires human genetic material. A human Reaper, Jean whispered, the knowledge flowing through her telepathy from Miranda's unshielded thoughts. The Cerberus operative's shield snapped up immediately, but too late. You think they're building a Reaper from human remains? Miranda's expression went cold. Stay out of my head. I'm not trying to, Jean winced. I'm sorry. Your minds are so loud here. Everyone thinks at me constantly. I'm not used to so many telepathically active species. The Asari especially, their neural structures are designed for mind melding. It's like everyone's shouting. Can you read all our thoughts? Gurus demanded. Surface thoughts, Jean admitted. Emotional states. With effort, deeper memories, but I don't do that without permission. It's a violation. She looked at Jack. You've been experimented on enough. You know what it's like to have your autonomy stripped away. Jack's expression softened fractionally. Yeah. I do. She turned to Shepard. She's telling the truth. I can feel her trying not to listen. It's like she's constantly filtering static. The element zero exposure, Storm said, pieces clicking together. Biotics work by generating mass effect fields through neural impulses. If most species here have some level of biotic potential, then every mind generates psychic noise that your telepathy picks up, Miranda finished. Fascinating. Asari can mind meld, but they have to make conscious contact. You're receiving passive thoughts just by proximity. It's overwhelming, Jean admitted. But it's also given me information. Shepard, you died and Cerberus resurrected you. Your crew doesn't trust them, doesn't trust you sometimes because of that association. But you're doing what you think is right, even if it means working with people you hate. Shepard's jaw tightened. Stay out of my head. I wasn't trying. I don't care. The commander's voice was ice. My thoughts are mine. My memories are mine. You don't get to take them just because you can't control your powers. The rebuke stung, but Storm recognized the justice in it. She'd heard Charles Xavier make the same arguments countless times, that telepathy without consent was violation, regardless of intent. You're right, Jean said quietly. I'll work on better shields. But Commander, you need to understand, the Phoenix Force feeds on life energy. Being surrounded by billions of minds across this galaxy, it's making control harder. I need to learn to adapt to your reality's rules, or eventually I will lose control. Then we need to get you somewhere isolated, Gurus suggested. A dead world, uninhabited system. No, Storm's voice was firm. Isolation makes Jean's control worse, not better. The Phoenix interprets absence of life as license to seek it out. She needs connection, grounding. She turned to Shepard. You said the collectors are abducting colonists. If we help you stop them, we're staying where there are people. Where Jean can remember what she's fighting for. And if she loses control on my ship? Shepard challenged. Then I'll stop her. Storm's eyes flashed white. I've done it before. I'll do it again. But we won't abandon people to the collectors just because you're afraid of us. The tension crackled between them like live current. Finally, Shepard nodded slowly. All right. But we do this my way. Miranda, I want full biometric monitoring on both of them. If Gray's power levels spike, I need to know immediately. She looked at Storm and Jean. You'll have quarters on the Normandy, our ship. You'll attend all mission briefings. And you'll submit to examination by our science team. No experiments, Jean said sharply. Information gathering only, Shepard clarified. My science officer is Mordin Solus, a Solarian. Brilliant, ethical, and he'll want to understand how you function in relation to element zero physics. No invasive procedures. No samples without permission. Storm considered this. Agreed. But we're not crew members, Commander. We're consultants. We'll fight the collectors, but we make our own tactical decisions. As long as those decisions don't endanger my people. The same goes for yours regarding ours. Shepard smiled faintly. I think we understand each other. She pushed off from the table. Welcome to the Normandy. We leave for the Citadel in 6 hours, need to report what happened here and resupply. That'll give you time to rest and get oriented. The Citadel? Jean asked. Galactic capital. Massive space station, home to the Council, the Asari, Turian, and Solarian representatives who run Citadel space. Also home to every intelligence agency in the galaxy. Shepard's expression turned serious. Which means when we dock there, everyone is going to want to know what you are. The Council will demand answers. The Solarian STG will try to recruit you. The Asari will lose their minds over a human telepath. And that's before we get into what Cerberus wants. What does Cerberus want? Storm asked, though she suspected she knew. Miranda answered, her voice clinical. The elusive man wants humanity to stand as equals with the Council races. 2 Omega-level human assets from another dimension. She smiled thinly. You're exactly the kind of advantage he's looking for. We're not weapons, Jean said firmly. Everyone's a weapon if you know how to use them, Jack muttered. Welcome to the galaxy, Psychic. It's worse than you think. As they filed out of the conference room, Storm felt the weight of their situation settling over her. They were far from Charles, from Logan, from the X-Men. In a galaxy that ran on technology that interfered with their powers, surrounded by species who would see them as threats or tools. But they'd faced worse. They'd survived Sentinels and genocide, hatred and fear. They would survive this too. Jean touched her mind gently. Aurora, the voice from before. The one that possessed the Collector. I felt it through the connection. It's still watching us. And it's not just curious anymore. What is it feeling? Jean's mental voice was grim. Hunger. It wants to understand the Phoenix Force. And I think it wants to consume it. Storm said nothing, but her hand found Jean's as they walked through Omega's corridors toward the docking bay where the Normandy waited. Whatever came next, they would face it together. They always had. The Normandy State Route 2 was beautiful in the way that apex predators were beautiful, sleek, deadly, built for a single purpose. Storm stood in the cargo bay watching crew members load supplies, her enhanced senses cataloging every detail. The ship hummed with power, its Mass Effect core generating fields that made her weather manipulation itch constantly. Impressive, isn't she? Gurus had appeared beside her, his subvocals carrying notes of pride. Cerberus built her after the original Normandy was destroyed. Faster, tougher, more firepower. She's the most advanced frigate in the galaxy. Destroyed? Storm asked. Collectors hit us 2 years ago. Killed half the crew. Killed Shepard. Gurus's mandibles twitched, Storm was learning to read Turian expressions. But she's back now. We all are. Getting the band back together to finish what we started. You trust her. It wasn't a question. With my life. She's saved it enough times. He paused. But I don't trust Cerberus. And I sure as hell don't trust 2 unknowns with enough power to crack planets. No offense. None taken. Mistrust keeps you alive. Storm watched a blue-skinned Asari carry crates with casual biotic manipulation, Mass Effect fields making 100-kilo loads float like feathers. We don't trust easily either. Experience has taught us that people who fear power tend to try destroying it. Or weaponizing it, Gurus agreed. You'll fit in here. Half this crew shouldn't trust the other half, but we all trust Shepard. He gestured toward the elevator. Come on. Morden's waiting to scan you. Fair warning, he talks fast, thinks faster, and will ask 1,000 questions. The science lab was organized chaos. Equipment Storm didn't recognize lined every surface, holographic displays showing genetic sequences and chemical formulas. In the center of it all stood a Solarian, thin, quick movements, enormous eyes that missed nothing. Ah! Excellent! Subject arrived. Mordin Solas spoke at machine gun pace, already gesturing Storm toward a medical scanner. Preliminary scans from Omega showed impossible readings. Human baseline biology, but genetic sequences that shouldn't exist. X-gene expression, cellular mutation, bioelectric generation at levels that would kill normal humans. Fascinating. Please, stand here. Scanner non-invasive. Simple biometric analysis. Storm complied, though every instinct screamed caution. Too many labs, too many scientists who'd wanted to dissect what made mutants different. But Morden's enthusiasm seemed genuine, almost childlike in its scientific curiosity. Energy generation incredible, Morden muttered, studying his displays. Producing kilowatts through metabolic processes alone. But no element zero exposure, no biotic nodes, no mass effect field generation. Different mechanism entirely. Question: how do you manipulate electromagnetic spectrum without ESO? Mutation, Storm explained. My cells generate and control electrical fields naturally. It's genetic, inherited, though my particular expression is unique. Evolutionary adaptation. Brilliant. Humans in this galaxy require technological enhancement for biotics. But you, natural ability, no implants needed. He looked up sharply. Question: offspring. Do mutations breed true? Sometimes. Mutant genetics are complex. Some abilities pass down, others emerge spontaneously. Storm hesitated. On our world, mutation is becoming more common. Some theorize we're the next stage of human evolution. Homo superior versus Homo sapiens. Classic speciation divergence. Implies conflict, old species resistant to replacement. Morden's tone shifted, more serious. Assume your world experienced anti-mutant violence. Yes. Yes. The single word carried centuries of pain. Unfortunate. Predictable, but unfortunate. Fear of difference, biological imperative to preserve genetic line. Leads to genocide if unchecked. He saved his scans, then turned to her fully. For what worth, Solarian Union would find your mutations fascinating, not threatening. Short lifespans encourage innovation over tradition. Change is survival. Storm smiled faintly. I wish more species shared that view. Most don't. Most species prioritize stability, familiar patterns. Aceri live 1,000 years, become conservative, resistant to change despite claims of wisdom. Turians value hierarchy, conformity to military structure. Humans, he paused. Humans are interesting. Shortest species in council space beside Solarians. Aggressive, adaptable, but also tribal. Suspicious of outsiders. We've noticed, Storm said dryly. Question: your companion. Jean Grey. Preliminary scans showed energy readings that exceeded station capacity. Phoenix Force, what exactly is it? Before Storm could answer, the lab doors opened. Jean entered, looking exhausted. Behind her, Miranda frowned at her data pad. Subject's cellular structure is impossible, Miranda said without preamble. She's showing quantum-level phenomena in her DNA. Particles existing in superposition, responding to observation. And her brain activity, she looked up. Dr. Solis, you need to see this. Morden gestured Jean toward the scanner. She hesitated, eyes finding Storm's. It's all right, Storm said gently. They need to understand what they're dealing with. Jean nodded and stepped into the scanner. Immediately, every display in the lab went haywire. Energy readings spiked off the charts, and a low hum filled the air, the Phoenix Force responding to examination. Extraordinary. Morden breathed. Energy signature doesn't match any known phenomena. Not dark energy, not biotic fields, not even Reaper technology. Something entirely outside mass effect physics. He worked frantically, adjusting sensors. Readings suggest entity is multidimensional, existing partially in normal space, partially elsewhere. Question: Phoenix Force conscious? Yes, Jean said quietly. It's ancient. Intelligent. And it doesn't think the way organic beings do. To the Phoenix, death and life are the same thing, just different phases of existence. Reaper philosophy, Gurus muttered from the doorway. Storm hadn't heard him enter. They preserve organic life by turning it into synthetic constructs. Life through death. No, Jean's voice was sharp. The Reapers pervert life. The Phoenix transforms it. There's a difference. The Phoenix creates new possibilities from destruction. The Reapers just end things. Make them static. Eternal but dead. Philosophical distinction, Mordin mused. But important one. Phoenix represents chaos and change. Reapers represent order and stasis. Fundamentally opposed paradigms. He studied Jean with new intensity. Question, Element 0 interaction. Scans show EZO exposure causing interference with Phoenix manifestation. Like, dampening field. Why? Jean frowned. I don't know. Ever since we arrived, the Phoenix has felt muffled. Like I'm trying to channel its power through thick glass. Your mass effect fields create resistance. Hypothesis, Element 0 alters fundamental physical constants in localized areas. Mass, inertia, gravity, all subject to manipulation. Phoenix force operates outside those constants. When EZO fields overlap, Phoenix manifestation creates interference pattern. Mordin nodded to himself. Good news, means Phoenix power limited in galaxy dominated by EZO technology. Bad news, means Phoenix force increasingly frustrated by limitation. Could lead to explosive breakthrough, Jean finished. Yes. I've felt it building. The Phoenix doesn't like being constrained. Miranda's expression hardened. Then we have a ticking time bomb on this ship. We have a person struggling with circumstances beyond her control, Storm corrected icily. Jean has managed the Phoenix force for years. Show some respect. Respect doesn't negate reality, Miranda shot back. If she loses control. She won't. Storm's eyes flashed white. Because I won't let her. And because Jean Grey is one of the strongest, most disciplined people I've ever known. She's died protecting others, been resurrected, and carried a cosmic entity inside her mind without losing herself. Your concern is noted, but your attitude is insulting. Silence fell across the lab. Mordin watched the exchange with interest, head tilted like a bird observing prey. Loyalty, he said finally. Strong bond between subjects. Psychological stabilization through interpersonal connection. Good. Suggests Jean Grey maintains control through emotional anchoring. Storm provides grounding presence. He nodded decisively. Recommend quarters adjacent. Proximity helps stabilization. I'll note that in my report, Miranda said stiffly. She turned to Jean. The elusive man wants to speak with you. Both of you. Video conference in the comm room in 30 minutes. We don't take orders from Cerberus, Storm said. Consider it a conversation, not an order. He's interested in your situation. And he has resources that might help you get home. Jean and Storm exchanged glances. The unspoken communication was immediate, dangerous. He'll want something in return. But if he has information, we'll hear what he has to say, Storm said carefully. But that's all we're promising. Miranda nodded and left. Gurus lingered. Fair warning, the Turian said. The elusive man doesn't do anything without an angle. Whatever he offers, there'll be strings attached. We've dealt with manipulators before, Jean said. She looked tired, Storm noticed. The constant psychic noise of the ship's crew was wearing on her. Thank you for the warning. After Gurus left, Mordin continued working silently for a moment, then spoke without looking up. Personal observation, you remind me of someone. Solarian scientist who experimented on Krogan during genophage deployment. Brilliant mind, trapped by terrible purpose. Modified genophage to be more effective. Killed billions through biological weapon. He finally met Jean's eyes. Died trying to cure what he'd created. Seeking redemption. Question, if Phoenix Force broke free, destroyed inhabited world, could you live with that? Jean's voice was barely a whisper. No. If I thought I couldn't control it anymore, I'd find a way to end myself before letting it hurt innocence. Thought as much. Morden's tone gentled fractionally. For what worth, hope you never face that choice. Galaxy could use more people willing to bear impossible burdens to protect others. Too few of those. Storm placed a hand on Jean's shoulder as they left the lab, feeling the tremor in her friend's telekinetic field. The Phoenix was pulling harder here, drawn by the density of life aboard the Normandy, frustrated by the EZO interference, hungering for release. We'll find a way through this, Storm murmured. We always do. Jean smiled weakly. I'm glad you're here, Ororo. I don't think I could do this alone. You're never alone. The comm room was small, dominated by a massive holographic display. When Storm and Jean entered, the display activated, and the elusive man appeared. He sat in a chair surrounded by screens showing data streams, his face partially shadowed, eyes replaced by glowing cybernetic implants. He held a cigarette with practiced ease, studying them with the calculating intensity of a predator evaluating prey. Storm. Jean Grey. His voice was smooth, cultured, utterly confident. Welcome to the Normandy. I trust Morden's examination wasn't too invasive. What do you want? Storm asked bluntly. The elusive man smiled. Direct. I appreciate that. What I want is simple, I want humanity to survive. To thrive. To stand as equals, or superiors, to the council races that have dominated this galaxy for millennia. He leaned forward slightly. And you represent something unprecedented. 2 human Omega-level assets from another reality. Do you understand what that means for our species? It means you see us as weapons, Jean said flatly. I see you as opportunities. There's a difference. He took a drag from his cigarette. The Council fears humanity's rapid advancement. They limit our expansion, deny us full representation, treat us as upstarts despite humanity's contributions. But you're proof that human potential exceeds anything the Asari or Solarians can imagine. We're not your proof, Storm said coldly. We're not even from this reality. Our existence says nothing about your humanity's potential. Doesn't matter. Perception shapes reality in politics. The elusive man's smile widened. But I'm not here to argue philosophy. I'm here to make an offer. You want to go home. I have resources, scientists studying dimensional theory, Prothean archives that hint at reality manipulation, access to every classified database in Alliance space. Work with me, and I'll dedicate everything I have to finding you a way back. In exchange for what? Jean asked, though she already knew. Your cooperation. Your powers. Your expertise in dealing with threats beyond conventional warfare. He gestured, and the display shifted to show images of collector attacks, colonies burning, thousands of people paralyzed by seeker swarms, harvested like crops. The collectors are just the beginning. The reapers are coming. When they arrive, they'll harvest every organic civilization in the galaxy. Unless we stop them. And you think we're the key to stopping them, Storm said. I think you're variables the reapers can't account for. Sovereign, the reaper Shepard destroyed, was millions of years old, with intelligence beyond our comprehension. But it couldn't predict Shepard's actions. It failed because we introduced chaos into its perfect calculations. He leaned back. You're chaos on an exponential scale. A cosmic entity that operates outside this reality's physics. Storm, you generate weather in vacuum. Gray, you manipulate matter at the quantum level. The Reapers have never encountered anything like you. Jean felt the Phoenix stir, responding to the implied challenge. And if we refuse? The elusive man's expression didn't change. Then you're on your own. No resources, no support, no help getting home. You'll be hunted by every intelligence agency in the galaxy, studied, possibly vivisected by species who see you as threats. The Aseri won't tolerate a human telepath, it undermines their entire cultural superiority. The Turians will want you conscripted or contained. The Solarians, he smiled. Well, let's just say the STG's methods make Cerberus look humanitarian. That's a threat, Storm said quietly, electricity crackling between her fingers. It's reality. The elusive man remained calm despite the display of power. I'm offering protection, resources, and purpose. All I ask in return is that you fight for humanity's survival. No experiments, no dissections, no slavery. Just cooperation against a common enemy. Storm and Jean looked at each other. The offer was tempting, dangerously so. But they'd heard similar offers before, from people who promised respect and delivered exploitation. We'll think about it, Jean said finally. That's all I ask. The elusive man's image flickered. One more thing. The entity possessing collectors during the Omega attack, that was Harbinger. The first Reaper, the oldest, the most dangerous. It's noticed you, Grey. It's noticed the Phoenix Force. And it very much wants to understand what you are. Let it try, Jean said, allowing a flicker of Phoenix fire to dance across her eyes. The Phoenix has faced cosmic threats before. I hope so. Because Harbinger has destroyed civilizations for 50 million years. It's patient, ruthless, and it never stops. The elusive man stood. Think about my offer. We dock at the Citadel in 4 hours. After that, the galaxy will know you exist. And everyone will want a piece of you. The transmission ended, leaving Storm and Jean alone in the calm room. He's right about one thing, Jean said quietly. Harbinger is interested. I can feel it watching, calculating. The Phoenix represents something it's never encountered before. Then we prepare, Storm said firmly. We learn everything we can about this galaxy, its factions, its technology. We find allies we can trust, really trust, not conditional partnerships. And if we can't get home? Storm met her eyes. Then we do what we've always done. We fight for those who can't fight for themselves. X-Men, remember? We protect people. Even if this isn't our world, even if these aren't our people, they're still people. Still worth protecting. Jean smiled, the first genuine smile since they'd arrived. Charles would be proud. Charles would tell us we're being reckless and dive in right beside us, Storm corrected. They stood together in the calm room, two mutants far from home, watching the stars stream past through the viewport as the Normandy jumped to FTL. Somewhere ahead lay the Citadel, heart of galactic civilization. And beyond that, in the darkness between stars, ancient machines watched and calculated. The cycle had encountered its first true variable. And neither the Reapers nor the Phoenix Force were known for their restraint. The Citadel materialized through the viewport like a flower carved from metal and light, 5 massive arms extending from a central ring, each arm housing millions of inhabitants from dozens of species. Storm had seen magnificent cities before, Wakanda's gleaming spires, Atlantis beneath the waves, even Asgard in the brief moments before its fall. But the Citadel was something else entirely, a space station the size of a small moon, built by the Protheans 50,000 years ago and repurposed by the galaxy's current inhabitants. Impressive, she murmured. Wait until you see the Presidium, Gurus said from beside her. Lakes, parks, artificial sky. They built paradise inside a weapons platform. Weapons platform? Jean asked sharply. The Citadel's true purpose, Shepard said, joining them at the viewport. It's a mass relay designed to bring the Reapers directly into the heart of galactic civilization. The Council didn't believe me when I told them. Probably still don't, despite everything I've shown them. Her expression was grim. Politics and denial make excellent partners. The Normandy approached the docking arm, guided by traffic control through a maze of ships, freighters, cruisers, patrol vessels from a dozen different species. Storm watched an Asari dreadnought glide past, its mass effect fields rippling space itself, and felt profoundly small. The X-Men had fought gods and cosmic entities, but this was an entire galactic civilization operating on scales Earth couldn't imagine. "You're quiet," Jean sent telepathically. "Thinking about home. About how isolated Earth is compared to this." Storm gestured at the vast station. "They've built a society spanning thousands of worlds. We're still fighting over borders and resources on one planet." "Different scales, same problems," Jean replied. "I'm reading surface thoughts from passing ships. Political tensions, species prejudices, economic conflicts. Power and fear drive behavior everywhere, apparently." The Normandy settled into its berth with practiced ease. Shepard turned to address the assembled crew, Storm and Jean, Gurus, Miranda, and Jack, who'd insisted on coming despite Shepard's protests. "We're here to resupply and report to the Council. They'll want to know about the Collector attack on Omega." She looked at Storm and Jean. "They'll also want to know about you. I can't keep you secret, too many sensors track the battle, too many witnesses. But I can control the narrative. Miranda's already filed preliminary reports describing you as human consultants with specialized abilities. No mention of alternate dimensions or cosmic entities." Lying to the Council, Gurus observed. "This should go well." "I prefer selective truth," Shepard corrected. "But here's the problem. The Citadel has the best intelligence networks in the galaxy. Solarian STG, Asari Commandos, Turian Intelligence, not to mention CSEC and every information broker who operates here. Someone's going to dig deeper. When they do, we'll handle it," Storm said firmly. "We've dealt with government scrutiny before. Not like this." Miranda's tone was sharp. "On Earth, you had Professor Xavier to shield you politically. Here, you have no such protection. The moment an Asari matriarch discovers a human telepath, or a Turian general realizes you can generate city-destroying power without biotics, you'll be labeled threats to galactic security." "Then we prove we're not," Jean said simply. "By doing what?" Miranda challenged. "By helping." Jean met her gaze steadily. "We're X-Men. That's what we do." The Presidium was as beautiful as Gurus had promised, a ring of carefully maintained parks and lakes with buildings that flowed organically from the architecture. An artificial sky provided the illusion of atmosphere, and citizens of a dozen species moved through the space with practiced ease. Asari in elegant robes conversed with Turian military officers. Solarians hurried past with the characteristic quick movements of their species. Humans in Alliance uniforms mixed with Hanner, floating jellyfish-like beings whose translator implants gave them oddly formal speech patterns. Storm felt eyes tracking them immediately. Not hostile, but intensely curious. Word of the Omega incident had clearly spread. "Shepard," a voice called. They turned to see a human in dress blues approaching, older, distinguished, the kind of bearing that came from decades of command. "Admiral Anderson. Didn't expect to see you on the Citadel." "Commander." Anderson clasped Shepard's hand warmly, then his gaze shifted to Storm and Jean. His expression didn't change, but Storm saw the momentary widening of his eyes, the subtle shift in posture. Recognition of potential threat. "These must be your new consultants. The ones who fought collectors on Omega." "Storm and Jean Grey," Shepard introduced. "This is Admiral David Anderson. Former commanding officer of the original Normandy. One of the few people in the Alliance who actually believed me about the Reapers." Anderson nodded respectfully. "I've read Miranda's report. Impressive capabilities. Unusual backgrounds." There was a question implicit in those words. "We're from outside Council space," Storm said carefully. The agreed-upon cover story, vague enough to be unhelpful, specific enough to discourage questions. Our homeworld experienced unique evolutionary pressures. We developed abilities that don't match standard biotic profiles. I can see that. Anderson's expression was thoughtful. The council's already asking questions. They want to meet with you. Shepard, the council chamber in 2 hours. Formal audience. He paused. Fair warning, Counselor Sparatus is particularly interested. Turians don't like variables they can't predict or control. We'll be there, Shepard said. As Anderson departed, Jean touched Storm's mind. He's worried. Afraid we'll destabilize the political situation. But he also respects Shepard enough to trust her judgment. Can you hear everyone? Storm asked silently. Not everyone. It's like radio signals. Some minds broadcast louder than others. Asari are brightest, their neural structures practically scream. Solarians think so fast it's like listening to static. Turians are quieter, more disciplined. Jean paused. But there's something else. Background noise I can't identify. Like someone's watching through surveillance, but psychically. Before Storm could respond, a figure materialized from the crowd, blue-skinned, elegant, with the distinctive facial markings of Asari. But where most Asari moved with serene confidence, this one moved with predatory grace. She stopped directly in front of Jean, studying her with uncomfortable intensity. Matriarch Aethyta, the Asari said without preamble. And you're the human who thinks so loudly the entire Citadel can feel it. Jean tensed. I'm not trying to. Don't care about your intentions. Care about facts. Aethyta crossed her arms. I'm one of 3 Asari on this station old enough and skilled enough to sense telepathic activity beyond standard mind melding. For the past 6 hours, I've felt a presence, young, powerful, undisciplined. Then you dock, and suddenly I know where it's coming from. She leaned closer. You're a human telepath. That shouldn't exist. Lots of things that shouldn't exist do, Jack muttered. Get in line. Aethyta's gaze flicked to Jack, and something like recognition crossed her face. Subject 0. Heard about you. Cerberus's mistake. She turned back to Jean. But you're different. Your telepathy isn't like Asari melding. It's always on, always receiving. Must be hell. It's manageable, Jean said carefully. It's torture, Aethyta corrected. I can feel you struggling to filter thousands of minds. Asari spend centuries learning to meld properly. You're doing it constantly, involuntarily, with no training. She paused. That why you've got the other thing inside you? The fire? The Phoenix Force responded to direct observation, flaring in Jean's eyes. Aethyta didn't flinch, just nodded slowly. Thought so. Entity, not just power. Sentient. Old. She looked at Storm. And you're the anchor. Keeping her grounded when the entity tries to take over. You can sense the Phoenix? Storm asked, electricity crackling in warning. I can sense distortions in psychic space. And that thing, Aethyta gestured at Jean, creates distortions like I've never seen. Reality bends around it. She smiled grimly. Matriarchs are going to lose their minds when they find out. Asari have based our entire cultural identity on being the most advanced biotic and psychic species. Human telepath with an ancient entity riding shotgun. That's an existential crisis waiting to happen. We don't want to create problems, Jean said. Too late. Your existence is a problem. Question is whether you're a problem that helps or hurts. Aethyta studied them both. Shepard trusts you. That counts for something. She's got good instincts, even if she makes terrible political choices. She turned to leave, then paused. Word of advice, stay away from the Asari counselor. Tevos is brilliant, diplomatic, and absolutely ruthless when she perceives threats to Asari hegemony. She finds out what you are, she'll move to neutralize you. Politically if possible, permanently if necessary. She disappeared into the crowd, leaving silence in her wake. Well, Gurus said finally. That was terrifying. She's right, Miranda said quietly. The moment the council understands what Jean represents, they'll take action. We need to control the narrative before that meeting. How? Shepard demanded. Storm spoke up, her voice carrying the authority she'd learned from years leading the X-Men in Charles Xavier's absence. We don't hide. We don't apologize. We present ourselves as allies offering assistance against a common threat. The Collectors are abducting colonies. The Reapers are coming. Jean and I have capabilities that can help. That's the narrative. And if they demand you submit to council authority? Miranda challenged. Then we politely decline, Jean said. We're not weapons to be controlled. We're people offering partnership. They can accept that or not. Jack laughed, short and sharp. I like you too. You've got balls. Stupid, but I respect it. Human telepath with an ancient entity riding shotgun. That's an existential crisis waiting to happen. We don't want to create problems, Jean said. Too late. Your existence is a problem. Question is whether you're a problem that helps or hurts. Aethyta studied them both. Shepard trusts you. That counts for something. She's got good instincts, even if she makes terrible political choices. She turned to leave, then paused. Word of advice, stay away from the Asari counselor. Tevos is brilliant, diplomatic, and absolutely ruthless when she perceives threats to Asari hegemony. She finds out what you are, she'll move to neutralize you. Politically if possible, permanently if necessary. She disappeared into the crowd, leaving silence in her wake. Well, Gurus said finally. That was terrifying. She's right, Miranda said quietly. The moment the council understands what Jean represents, they'll take action. We need to control the narrative before that meeting. How? Shepard demanded. Storm spoke up, her voice carrying the authority she'd learned from years leading the X-Men in Charles Xavier's absence. We don't hide. We don't apologize. We present ourselves as allies offering assistance against a common threat. The Collectors are abducting colonies. The Reapers are coming. Jean and I have capabilities that can help. That's the narrative. And if they demand you submit to council authority? Miranda challenged. Then we politely decline, Jean said. We're not weapons to be controlled. We're people offering partnership. They can accept that or not. Jack laughed, short and sharp. I like you too. You've got balls. Stupid, but I respect it. The council chamber was breathtaking, a circular platform suspended in open space with a holographic galaxy rotating at its center. 3 figures stood on an elevated dais, an Asari in formal robes radiating serene authority, a Turian in military dress whose bearing spoke of centuries of service, and a Solarian whose quick movements and sharp eyes missed nothing. Counselor Tevos. Counselor Sparatus. Counselor Valorn. The rulers of Citadel space. Shepard stood at attention, Storm and Jean flanking her. Behind them, Ambassador Udina, human representative to the council, looked nervous. The political implications of this meeting were clearly weighing on him. Commander Shepard, Tevos began, her voice melodious and controlled. Your report on the Collector attack on Omega was illuminating. As was your description of 2 human operatives with unprecedented capabilities. Storm and Jean Grey are consultants assisting with the Collector threat, Shepard said formally. Consultants. Sparatus's voice dripped skepticism. Your report claims one of them generated electrical discharges powerful enough to destroy multiple Collectors without biotic implants or weapon systems. The other reportedly disintegrated collectors at the molecular level using an unidentified energy field. His mandibles flared. These are not consulting abilities. These are strategic-level weapons. We're people, Jean said quietly, but her voice carried across the chamber. Not weapons. Tevos's gaze fixed on her with uncomfortable intensity. You speak with remarkable confidence for someone appearing before the council. Tell me, Jean Grey, where exactly are you from? Miranda Lawson's report was frustratingly vague on specifics. Jean felt Storm's supportive presence beside her, felt the phoenix stirring in response to perceived threat, and forced herself to remain calm. We're from outside council space. Our homeworld developed along different evolutionary paths. What you call impossible is natural for us. Evolutionary paths don't create abilities to manipulate fundamental forces of nature, Valorn said, speaking for the first time. His rapid speech pattern was characteristic of Solarians. Analyzed sensor data from Omega. Energy signatures don't match any known phenomenon, not dark energy, not biotics, not even Reaper technology. Either you're lying about your origins, or we're exactly what we claim to be, Storm interrupted, allowing her eyes to flash white. The temperature in the chamber dropped noticeably. Different. Unexpected. And offering our help against a threat that's already killed thousands. Sporadus's hand moved toward his Omni tool, a threat assessment, Storm realized. Preparing to call security if this went wrong. The collectors are accelerating their attacks, Shepard interjected quickly. Entire colonies disappearing overnight. The Alliance is stretched thin trying to protect every human settlement. Storm and Jean have proven they can fight collectors effectively. We need every advantage we can get. Or you've introduced unknown variables that could destabilize galactic security, Sporadus countered. He focused on Jean. Your report mentions telepathic abilities. You can read minds. Invade thoughts. Extract secrets. I can sense surface thoughts and emotions, Jean clarified. I don't invade privacy without cause. How comforting. Sporadus's voice was heavy with sarcasm. A human operative with the ability to extract intelligence from any mind she encounters, working for Cerberus. We don't work for Cerberus, Storm said sharply. We work with Commander Shepard. There's a difference. Tevos raised a hand, silencing further argument. Regardless of your loyalties, your presence raises questions that must be answered. Questions about human evolution, genetic engineering, possibly illegal AI research. The Phoenix Force surged, responding to the implied accusations. Jean's eyes blazed with cosmic fire, and for a moment, the council chamber temperature spiked 20 degrees. Counselors and guards tensed, hands moving to weapons. We are not experiments, Jean said, her voice carrying dual tones, her own and something vaster. We are not constructs. We are mutants, natural evolutionary variants who've spent our lives fighting for the right to exist. We came to this galaxy by accident. We're trying to help. If that's not acceptable. Jean. Storm's voice cut through the rising power, grounded and certain. Jean felt the familiar anchor, the connection that had saved her from the Phoenix's dominance countless times. The flames dimmed. The temperature normalized. Silence fell across the chamber. Valorn spoke first, his quick mind already calculating. Hypothesis, they're telling truth. Genetic variants from isolated human population. Developed abilities through evolutionary pressure. Arrival in council space accidental, not intentional infiltration. He studied them with scientific fascination rather than fear. Recommend observation and cooperation rather than confrontation. Pushing them away risks losing potential allies against collectors. Tevos and Sporadus exchanged glances, some silent communication passing between them. Very well, Tevos said finally. You may continue working with Commander Shepard. But understand, you will be monitored. Any indication that you pose a threat to galactic security, and the Council will take action. Her gaze intensified. And Jean Grey, use your telepathy to extract information from Council personnel, and it will be considered an act of war. Understood, Jean said quietly. Dismissed. As they filed out of the Council chamber, Storm felt the weight of thousands of eyes on them. News of the meeting would spread quickly. By tomorrow, every intelligence agency in the galaxy would be compiling dossiers on the two mutants who'd appeared from nowhere. That went better than expected, Shepard muttered. They threatened us with war, Jean said. Like I said, better than expected. Usually takes until the second meeting for death threats. Shepard's attempt at humor fell flat. But they're right about one thing. You're being watched now. Every move, every action. The Council doesn't trust unknowns. Neither do we, Storm said. We'll manage. But as they walked through the Presidium, Jean felt something that made her blood run cold. A presence touching her mind, not a Seri melding, not normal telepathy. Something vast and cold and utterly alien, observing her the way a scientist might observe a specimen. Psychological profile, incomplete. Genetic structure, anomalous. Power source, unquantifiable. Emotional anchors, exploitable. Harbinger. The Reaper was analyzing her, cataloging her, preparing strategies for when they inevitably met in combat. And beneath its cold calculation, Jean sensed something else, hunger. The same hunger the Phoenix carried. The hunger to consume, transform, perfect. They were more alike than she wanted to admit. And that terrified her. The Normandy's observation deck was empty at 0300 ship time, just darkness, stars, and the faint hum of the Mass Effect core. Jean Grey sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, struggling to meditate through the constant psychic noise of 40 crew members sleeping, dreaming, thinking even in their rest. She'd barely slept since arriving in this galaxy. Every time she closed her eyes, the Phoenix pushed harder, sensing weakness, demanding release. The door hissed open. Storm entered without speaking, settling beside Jean with the easy familiarity of decades of friendship. She didn't say anything, just sat, present and grounded, a living anchor against the cosmic storm raging in Jean's mind. It's getting worse, Jean said finally. I know. The EZO fields don't just interfere with the Phoenix, they irritate it. Like constantly touching a raw nerve. And the mines here, Ororo, there are so many, and they all broadcast so loudly. Aseri especially. Their neural structures are practically designed for telepathy. Every time one thinks near me, it's like someone screaming directly into my brain. Storm took Jean's hand. Then we find a way to adapt. We always do. What if we can't? Jean's voice cracked. What if the Phoenix breaks free here, in a galaxy with billions of people I can't protect? What if I become the extinction-level threat Harbinger is looking for? Then I'll stop you, Storm said simply. The same way I've stopped you before. With lightning, with love, with whatever it takes. She squeezed Jean's hand. But it won't come to that. Because you're Jean Grey. You've faced gods and demons and your own death. You've held the Phoenix for years when it should have consumed you in days. You're stronger than you think. I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm drowning. That's because you're carrying too much alone. Storm's voice carried gentle rebuke. You're trying to filter every mind on this ship, control the Phoenix, adapt to this reality's physics, and face down Reapers simultaneously. You're not Atlas, Jean. You don't have to hold up the sky by yourself. But who else can? Me. The voice came from the doorway. Jack stood there, arms crossed, looking uncomfortable with her own presence. Look, I'm shit at the whole feelings thing. But psychic? That I understand. And you're doing it wrong. Jean opened her eyes. Excuse me. Jack stepped into the observation deck, her tattoos glowing faintly with biotic energy. You're trying to filter everything. Block out the noise. That's exhausting, trust me, I tried for years with biotics. Trying to control every single mass effect field I generated. Nearly killed myself. What changed? Storm asked. Stopped fighting it. Started flowing with it. Jack sat down across from them, surprisingly graceful. Biotics isn't about forcing reality to obey you. It's about understanding mass effect fields and working with them. You can't make water flow uphill, but you can redirect the river. Jean frowned. You're saying I should stop trying to block out thoughts. I'm saying stop trying to hear nothing. Start trying to hear everything and let it wash through you without drowning. Jack shrugged. Might not work. But fighting a river just means you drown tired. It was surprisingly insightful advice. Jean took a breath, and instead of pushing the psychic noise away, she let it flow. Felt Miranda's restless dreams of perfection and failure. Felt Carissa's memories of calibrations and combat. Felt Morden's racing thoughts even in sleep, solving equations and ethical dilemmas simultaneously. And beneath it all, she felt Shepard, dreaming of burning ships and screaming voices, dying in vacuum while her crew evacuated. The trauma of resurrection. The weight of being the only one who believed the apocalypse was coming. It's overwhelming, Jean whispered, but her voice was steadier now. At first, Jack agreed. But you'll learn to tune it. Like background music. Always there, but you don't focus on it unless you need to. She stood. Also, Asari have meditation techniques for dealing with psychic overload. Matriarch Aethyta. The one from the Citadel. She's rough as hell, but she knows her shit. Might be worth asking. After Jack left, Storm studied Jean with concern. Do you think it will work? I think it's better than what I was doing. Jean managed a weak smile. Thank you for coming. For being here. Always. Storm stood, helping Jean to her feet. Come. You need rest, even if sleep is difficult. We have. The ship's emergency klaxons shattered the quiet. Joker's voice crackled over the intercom. All hands, combat stations. We've got collector signatures dropping out of FTL. Multiple contacts. They found us. Storm and Jean sprinted toward the bridge, arriving simultaneously with Shepard, Miranda, and Gurus. The main display showed 3 collector cruisers closing fast, particle weapons already charging. How did they find us? Miranda demanded. They didn't, Morden said, appearing from the tech lab at a dead run. They found them. He pointed at Storm and Jean. Collector sensors optimized for genetic anomalies. Phoenix Force reads as massive biological energy signature. Like beacon to moths. We led them here, Jean breathed, horror washing through her. Doesn't matter. Shepard's voice cut through the rising panic. Joker, evasive maneuvers. Gurus, get on the main gun. Miranda, coordinate crew to combat stations. She turned to Storm and Jean. You two, can you fight in vacuum? I can fly, Storm said. Generate atmospheric pressure around myself. But my powers are limited without natural weather systems to draw from. Phoenix Force operates anywhere, Jean said, the cosmic entity surging eagerly at the prospect of combat. But Shepard, if I release too much power. Then don't release too much. Release exactly enough to keep my crew alive. Shepard was already moving toward the armory. Gurus, get them environmental suits with kinetic barriers. Storm, I need you targeting collector fighter swarms, your lightning should fry their electronics. Jean, focus on the cruiser's weapon systems. Can you affect technology telekinetically? Yes, but I've never tried it on mass effect-based systems. Time to learn. Shepard sealed her helmet. We survive this, you two are getting full combat integration training. We don't survive, it won't matter. Move. The Normandy shuddered as the first collector particle beam raked across shields. Through the viewports, Storm could see fighter swarms launching from the cruisers, dozens of small craft piloted by those horrific possessed beings. She sealed her helmet, feeling claustrophobic in the environmental suit, and followed Shepard to the airlock. Beside her, Jean's eyes blazed with phoenix fire even through the helmet's visor. Like old times, Storm sent telepathically. Worse odds than usual, Jean replied. But yes. Like old times. The airlock opened, and they launched into the void. Space combat was nothing like atmosphere combat. No air resistance, no ground to return to, no horizon to orient by. Storm floated in three-dimensional chaos, collector fighters swarming around the Normandy like locusts. She reached for her powers, feeling the familiar surge of bioelectricity, and then felt the EZO fields interfering, dampening, redirecting. No. Not fighting the river. Flowing with it. She remembered Jack's advice. Instead of forcing her electricity to manifest against the mass effect fields, she let it flow through them, used the EZO particles themselves as conductors. Lightning erupted from her hands in cascading arcs, not the pure elemental fury she could summon on Earth, but enough. Collector fighters exploded as their primitive electronics overloaded, chain reactions rippling through the swarm. Jean was even more terrifying to watch. She hung in space wreathed in phoenix fire, and where her attention focused, reality bent. Collector cruiser weapons twisted mid-firing, redirected back toward their own ships. Particle beams curved impossibly, guided by telekinetic will backed by cosmic power. Fighter swarms simply stopped, their pilots' minds overwhelmed by telepathic force that Jean had stopped trying to control and simply unleashed. Assuming direct control. The voice echoed across both normal space and psychic channels. One collector fighter jerked unnaturally, its movements taking on sinister coordination. Yellow eyes blazed as Harbinger's consciousness possessed the drone, and it accelerated directly toward Jean. Jean, above you. Storm screamed telepathically. Jean turned just as the possessed fighter opened fire at point-blank range. Particle beams struck her kinetic barriers, which flared and died. Without atmosphere to slow it, the beam would have vaporized her. Except the Phoenix Force erupted in full fury. Cosmic fire exploded from Jean's body in a sphere of absolute power. The possessed fighter disintegrated. Two more cruisers caught in the blast suffered catastrophic damage, their hulls buckling under forces that ignored mass effect physics entirely. And through the psychic link, Storm felt Jean slipping, the Phoenix taking control, hungry for more, eager to consume the collectors, the cruisers, the galaxy if given chance. Jean! Storm dove toward her friend, electricity arcing from her hands. She'd done this before, knew the precise voltage needed to shock Jean's nervous system without killing her, to break the Phoenix's hold through pain and surprise. Lightning struck Jean's environmental suit. The electrical discharge traveled through the conductive elements, and Jean convulsed. The Phoenix fire dimmed. For a moment, Storm saw her friend's eyes, terrified, grateful, exhausted, before the flames went out entirely. Storm caught her as Jean's body went limp, magnetic grapples linking their suits. Around them, the surviving collector cruiser was retreating, its fighter swarms destroyed or fleeing. The Normandy's main gun fired a final salvo, and the cruiser's engines exploded. It tumbled into the debris field, hemorrhaging atmosphere and bodies. Normandy, 2 for pickup, Storm transmitted. Jean's unconscious but alive. Copy that, Joker responded. That was the most insane thing I've ever seen. And I've seen some shit. The airlock cycled, pulling them back into artificial gravity and blessed atmosphere. Storm removed her helmet, checking Jean's vitals. Steady. Unconscious, but steady. Shepard was there immediately, medical scanner in hand. What happened? The Phoenix took over, Storm said quietly. I had to shock her back to awareness. It's a technique we developed years ago, emergency measure when she's losing control. Will she be alright? Physically, yes. Psychologically, Storm looked at her oldest friend's pale face. This galaxy is pushing her toward a breaking point. The Phoenix is getting stronger here, not weaker. And every time she has to use it, the risk of losing control increases. Miranda appeared, datapad in hand. Sensor logs show Gray-generated output equivalent to a cruiser's main weapon. She trailed off. That's impossible for organic biology. Welcome to mutants, Storm said tiredly. We're impossible by definition. Mordin hurried over, scanning Jean with clinical fascination. Energy expenditure should have killed her. Cells should have burned out, neural tissue fried. But reading shows rapid regeneration, Phoenix Force repairing damage faster than it occurs. Remarkable. Also terrifying. Subject essentially immortal if Phoenix remains active. She's not a subject, Storm said sharply. She's a person. One who just saved your ship at tremendous personal cost. Apologies. You're right. Mordin's tone softened slightly. Observation, Jean Grey exhibits heroic tendency to self-sacrifice. Combined with Phoenix immortality, creates dangerous pattern. Will push herself past breaking point because knows she'll survive. But survival isn't same as remaining whole. Storm said nothing, because Mordin was right. Jean had died before for the X-Men. The Phoenix brought her back. But each resurrection, each near-death, chipped away at her humanity. Made it easier for the Phoenix to convince her that power was the answer, that burning away problems solved them. Get her to the med bay, Shepard ordered. Storm, you should rest too. That was. I'm fine, Storm interrupted. Someone needs to watch her when she wakes. Make sure the Phoenix hasn't changed anything. Shepard nodded understanding. All right. But Storm. That thing you did, shocking her to break the Phoenix's control. You might have just saved more than my crew. If Grey had lost it completely out there. The Phoenix would have consumed every collector in range, then kept going, Storm finished. I know. That's why I had to stop her. She looked down at Jean's unconscious form. That's why I'll always stop her, no matter what it costs. Jean woke 6 hours later, disoriented and aching. Storm was there immediately, helping her sit up. How many? Jean asked, her voice hoarse. How many what? How many did I kill before you stopped me? Storm hesitated. The collectors you destroyed were already attacking us. You saved the ship, Jean. That's not what I asked. Jean met her eyes. How close did I come to losing control? Close, Storm admitted. Closer than I've seen in years. The Phoenix wanted to keep burning. I could feel it through our connection. Jean closed her eyes. It's this galaxy. The sheer density of life, the ESO interference making it angry, Harbinger poking at it like a scientist examining bacteria. Every day I feel it pulling harder. She looked at Storm with desperate fear. What if next time you can't stop me? What if next time I go full Phoenix and burn inhabited worlds? Then we find a solution before there's a next time, Storm said firmly. Mordin mentioned the Phoenix repairs damage to keep you alive. Maybe that's the key, we don't fight it, we understand it. Learn to work with it the way Jack suggested working with telepathy. The Phoenix isn't telepathy. It's primordial chaos given form. Then we learn to channel chaos. Storm gripped Jean's hands. I will not let you face this alone. Neither will the others, Jack, Mordin, even Shepard. They're starting to understand what you're carrying. What you're sacrificing to stay in control. Jean wanted to believe that. Wanted to trust that this crew of strangers from another reality would stand beside her when the Phoenix inevitably broke free. But she'd seen Harbinger's cold calculation. Felt its hunger matching the Phoenix's. And she knew with terrible certainty that the Reapers would force a confrontation. Would push her until the Phoenix had no choice but to respond with everything it had. The question wasn't whether she'd lose control. The question was how many would die when she did. The data Mordin had been collecting for 3 days finally processed, and what it revealed changed everything. Storm stood in the science lab, watching holographic displays cycle through Jean's cellular structure, energy patterns, and Phoenix Force manifestations. Beside her, Shepard, Miranda, and Mordin studied the results with varying expressions of fascination and concern. Hypothesis was correct, Mordin said, his rapid speech somehow conveying both triumph and worry. Phoenix Force not weakening in this galaxy, adapting. Learning mass effect physics. Initial interference from element 0 created dampening effect, but entity is intelligent. Studying. Compensating. Meaning what? Shepard asked. Miranda answered, her voice tight. Meaning in approximately 2 weeks, the Phoenix Force will have fully adapted to our reality's physics. At that point, the dampening effect will disappear. Jean will have access to 100% of her power. She looked up sharply. Which means 100% of the threat. No, Storm said immediately. Jean is not a threat. Her control is, Miranda countered. The Phoenix Force is already pushing against her mental restraints. Give it full power in a galaxy it understands how to manipulate, and we'll have the most powerful ally against the Reapers anyone's ever seen, Storm interrupted. Or have you forgotten that Jean destroyed 3 collector cruisers single-handedly? I haven't forgotten that she nearly lost control doing it, Shepard said quietly. Storm, I trust you. I'm starting to trust Jean. But Miranda's right, we need contingencies. What happens if the Phoenix breaks free at full power near a populated world? The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Then I stop her, Storm said, electricity crackling around her fists. The same way I always have. Can you? Mordin asked, his tone clinical rather than accusatory. Phoenix Force adapting to mass effect physics means it will also learn to counter your electrical attacks. Already showing signs of resistance, last shock took longer to disrupt manifestation than initial Omega incident. Storm felt ice settle in her stomach. Mordin was right. Each time she'd had to shock Jean back to awareness, it took more voltage, more precise timing. Eventually, the Phoenix would adapt enough that even her Omega-level control over electricity wouldn't be sufficient. There must be another way, she said. There is. Everyone turned to see Jack standing in the doorway, arms crossed. Asari matriarchs. They've dealt with bonded entities before, cultural shit about the goddess Athame and spiritual joining. Aethyta might know how to help Psychic Girl build better mental walls. Aethyta barely tolerates humans, Miranda said dismissively. Why would she help? Because she's pissed at the other matriarchs for being stuck-up assholes, and helping a human telepath would make them lose their minds. Jack shrugged. Also, she actually gives a shit about people not dying horribly. Weird for an Asari that old, but there it is. Shepard considered this. It's worth trying. We're heading to Ilium anyway for supplies and intel. Aethyta maintains an apartment there. She looked at Storm. Think Jean would agree to training? If it helps her maintain control? Absolutely. Storm's voice carried absolute certainty. Jean would do anything to protect innocence from the Phoenix. That's who she is. Then we have a plan. Shepard nodded decisively. Mordin, keep monitoring Jean's adaptation rate. If she's going to hit full power in 2 weeks, I want daily updates on her stability. Miranda, coordinate with Cerberus intelligence, find out if the collectors are tracking Jean specifically or if the attack was opportunistic. Already done, Miranda said, pulling up her Omni tool. Cerberus analysis suggests Harbinger is specifically interested in the Phoenix Force. It attempted direct contact during the space battle, not just possession of drones, but psychic communication aimed at Jean. What did it say? Storm demanded. We don't know. Jean was unconscious before debriefing. But Elusive Man's analysts believe Harbinger sees the Phoenix as either a threat to be eliminated or an asset to be acquired. Storm's blood ran cold. The Reapers want to control the Phoenix Force. Or understand it, Mordin suggested. Reapers preserve organic life through technological conversion. Phoenix Force represents opposite paradigm, organic power that defies technological analysis. Would represent gap in Reaper understanding. Unacceptable to intelligence that believes it has perfected existence. Then they'll keep coming for her, Shepard said grimly. Every time Jean uses the Phoenix, she lights up like a beacon. The collectors will track her, and eventually Harbinger will make a direct move. Good, Storm said, her voice hard. Let them come. We'll be ready. Jean found Storm on the observation deck later that evening. Her friend stood at the viewport, watching Ilium grow larger as the Normandy approached, a glittering jewel of a world, all skyscrapers and trading centers, the economic heart of Asari space. You heard about Mordin's analysis, Jean said. It wasn't a question. Yes. Storm turned to face her. 2 weeks until full power. Are you afraid? Terrified. Jean moved to stand beside her. The Phoenix is already so hard to control. At full strength, in a galaxy it understands, she trailed off. Ororo, I've been thinking. Maybe I should leave. Find some uninhabited system, isolated world. Remove myself from population centers before. No, Storm's voice was iron. We tried isolation before, remember? After you first bonded with the Phoenix. You nearly lost yourself completely. The only thing that brought you back was connection, to me, to Logan, to the X-Men. You need people, Jean. Need reasons to stay human. But if I lose control near civilians, then we prevent that. Storm took Jean's hands. Jack suggested Aethyta could help. She's here on Ilium. Ancient, powerful, and apparently experienced with bonded entities. Will you speak with her? Jean hesitated. The Asari see me as a threat to their cultural identity. A human telepath undermines everything they've built their superiority on. Aethyta isn't like other Asari. Storm searched for words. Refreshingly blunt. Pragmatic. And she recognized what you're carrying immediately. If anyone in this galaxy can help you build better mental defenses, it's her. You really believe that? I believe we have to try everything. Storm squeezed Jean's hands. Because I refuse to lose you. Not to the Phoenix, not to the Reapers, not to this galaxy's fears. You're my sister, Jean. In every way that matters. And I will move heaven and earth to keep you whole. Jean felt tears prick her eyes. I don't deserve you. Yes, you do. You've saved my life more times than I can count. Let me save yours. Storm smiled. Besides, what are X-Men for if not standing together against impossible odds? Ilium was stunning, a world of sleek architecture and carefully managed ecosystems, where corporate power rivaled government authority and credits talked louder than principles. The Normandy docked at Nos Astra, the planet's capital, and within minutes Storm and Jean found themselves navigating crowded streets filled with Asari, Solarians, humans, and species they still didn't have names for. Aethyta's apartment was in a residential district overlooking the city. When they arrived, the matriarch answered the door with a datapad in one hand and a drink in the other. Wondered when you'd show up, she said without preamble. Felt the Phoenix adapting 3 days ago. Figured you'd need help before it learned how to completely ignore this reality's rules. She stepped aside. Come in. We've got work to do. The apartment was surprisingly modest, no ostentatious displays of wealth or power, just comfortable furniture and shelves lined with data chips and old-fashioned books. Aethyta gestured them to sit while she remained standing, studying Jean with uncomfortable intensity. "You're bleeding psychic energy," she said bluntly. "Like a wound that won't close. Every thought, every emotion, leaking out for anyone sensitive enough to feel. Must be exhausting." "It is," Jean admitted. "That's because you're fighting wrong battle. You're trying to contain the Phoenix Force like its enemy. But it's not, it's part of you now. Has been for years." Aethyta set down her drink. "Asari deal with bonded entities differently. We accept them. Integrate them. Create mental architecture where both consciousness and entity can coexist without one consuming the other." "I've tried that," Jean said. "The Phoenix is too powerful, too hungry. It doesn't want coexistence, it wants dominance. Because you keep treating it like invader." Aethyta's voice was sharp. "Entities respond to how they're perceived. Treat something as enemy, it becomes enemy. Treat it as aspect of self, dangerous aspect, yes, but still part of who you are, and it becomes manageable." Storm leaned forward. "How do we do that?" "Training. Meditation. Building mental constructs that channel rather than suppress." Aethyta pulled up a holographic display showing neural patterns. "Asari melding works through controlled mental bridges. We create pathways for thoughts to flow while maintaining boundaries that preserve individual identity. You need similar structure for Phoenix, channels that let it express without consuming." "That sounds like years of training," Jean said quietly. "Normally, yes. But you don't have years. You have days." Aethyta's expression turned serious. "So we do intensive work. I'll guide you through Asari meditation techniques, help you build mental frameworks that can handle cosmic-level power. It'll hurt. It'll push you to limits you didn't know you had. But if you want to stay in control when Phoenix reaches full power, this is the only way." Jean looked at Storm, who nodded encouragement. "All right," Jean said. "Teach me." The training was brutal. Aethyta led Jean through meditation exercises that required maintaining mental clarity while the Matriarch deliberately provoked the Phoenix Force, pushing psychic pressure against Jean's defenses, forcing the entity to respond, then helping Jean redirect rather than suppress the reaction. "You're still fighting it." Aethyta snapped on the third day. "Feel the Phoenix rising, don't shove it down. Guide it. Give it outlet that doesn't involve burning everything." Jean gritted her teeth, feeling cosmic fire building in her chest. The Phoenix wanted to lash out at Aethyta's provocation, wanted to prove its power, wanted to burn. Instead, Jean opened her eyes and let the fire flow out in controlled release. Phoenix flames danced across her hands, beautiful and terrible, but contained. Directed. The temperature in the room rose, but didn't spike. The power manifested, but didn't consume. "Better," Aethyta said, nodding approval. "You're learning. The Phoenix isn't enemy, it's tool. Dangerous tool, yes, but tools can be wielded." "It's not just a tool," Jean said, her voice carrying dual tones again. "It's alive. Sentient. It has desires, goals, hunger. So do you. Difference is you have conscience, ethics, reasons beyond hunger." Aethyta leaned back. "Phoenix Force is primordial, existed before morality, before civilization. But you're not primordial. You're human. Evolved. Capable of choosing when and how to use power. That's the advantage consciousness gives you." Storm, watching from the corner, felt hope kindle for the first time in days. Jean was changing, not becoming less powerful, but becoming more controlled. Learning to work with the Phoenix rather than constantly battling it. On the 5th day, Aethyta declared a practical test. "We're going to provoke the Phoenix deliberately," she announced. push you to the point where it wants to take over. Then you're going to maintain control anyway. That's insane, Storm protested. If Jean loses control, then you shock her like you always do, Aethyta interrupted. But she won't lose control. Because she's ready. She looked at Jean. Aren't you? Jean took a deep breath. 5 days of intensive training. 5 days of learning to channel rather than suppress, to redirect rather than fight. 5 days of building mental architecture that could house both her consciousness and the Phoenix's cosmic hunger. I'm ready, she said. Aethyta's mental pressure slammed into Jean like a hammer. Not gentle provocation, full-force psychic assault designed to trigger survival instincts, to make the Phoenix respond with overwhelming force. The cosmic entity roared to life, filling Jean's consciousness with fire and fury. Power beyond comprehension surged through her cells, demanding release, promising to burn away the threat, to consume everything. And Jean held it. She felt the Phoenix's hunger. Acknowledged it. Accepted it as part of herself. Then channeled it through the mental frameworks Aethyta had taught her, pathways that let power flow without destroying, outlets that satisfied the Phoenix's need to act without requiring apocalyptic destruction. Flames erupted around her body, but controlled. Directed upward, away from people. The temperature spiked, but Jean released excess heat in measured bursts rather than explosive waves. The Phoenix screamed for more, demanded dominance. No, Jean said aloud, her voice steady despite the cosmic power flowing through her. You're part of me. Not my master. We work together or not at all. The Phoenix raged for another moment, then, impossibly, it settled. Not suppressed. Not forced down. But acknowledged, integrated, accepted as aspect rather than invader. Jean opened her eyes. Aethyta was smiling. Now you're ready, the Matriarch said. When full power returns, you'll be able to handle it. Not perfectly, nothing handles cosmic forces perfectly. But well enough to stay yourself. To remain Jean Grey even when the Phoenix burns brightest. Storm moved to Jean's side immediately, checking for injury, for signs of Phoenix dominance. But Jean's eyes, while glowing faintly with cosmic fire, were clear. Aware. Human. How do you feel? Storm asked. Different, Jean said slowly. Like I've been trying to hold back the ocean, and someone finally taught me how to surf instead. She looked at her hands, where Phoenix flames still danced. It's still dangerous. Still hungry. But I understand it better now. And it understands me. Good. Aethyta picked up her datapad. Because Shepard just sent word. The collectors hit another colony. Major population center this time, Freedom's Progress. Cerberus has intel suggesting it's a trap. Harbinger wants to draw you out. Force confrontation on its terms. Then we go, Jean said immediately. Jean, Storm began. No. I spent 5 days learning to control this power. Time to prove I can use it to help people. Jean's voice was firm. The collectors are abducting innocents. Harbinger wants to study the Phoenix Force. Let it try. This time, I'll be ready. Storm studied her friend's face, seeing determination, control, and beneath it all, the cosmic fire that Jean Grey had finally learned to master rather than fight. Then we go together, Storm said. The way we always have. Aethyta watched them leave, then picked up her Omni tool and opened a coded channel. This is Matriarch Aethyta. Subject successfully trained in entity integration. Proceeding to combat test against collector forces. She paused. But Counselor Tevos, you should know. The Phoenix Force isn't just adapting to our physics. It's learning. Evolving. And when it reaches full manifestation, she looked out at Ilium's glittering cityscape. We may have introduced something into our galaxy that even the Reapers can't predict. Question is whether that's salvation or damnation. She closed the channel and poured herself another drink. Either way, the galaxy was about to change. Freedom's progress was dying. The agricultural colony on the border of human space had been a thriving settlement of 2,000 souls, families, farmers, engineers building a new life far from Earth's overcrowded cities. Now it was a graveyard. The Normandy sensors showed zero life signs as they approached, just the eerie silence of a place where people had vanished mid-task. Storm stood in the shuttle bay as Shepard briefed the ground team. Beside her, Jean radiated controlled power, phoenix flames dancing just beneath her skin, visible only to those who knew what to look for. Intel suggests the collectors hit this place hard and fast, Shepard said, pulling up holographic schematics of the colony. But here's what's wrong, they left the infrastructure intact. Usually collectors strip everything. This time they took the people and nothing else. Trap, Gurus muttered, checking his rifle. They want us here. They want her here. Miranda gestured at Jean. Harbinger's been studying the Phoenix Force since Omega. This is a setup. Probably seeker swarms, definitely possessed drones, maybe even Prothean technology we haven't seen before. Then we spring the trap, Jean said calmly. But this time, on our terms. Shepard studied her. 5 days of training with Aethyta had changed something fundamental in Jean Grey. She carried herself differently now, not fighting her power, but wielding it with purpose. The desperation was gone, replaced by controlled confidence. All right. Here's how we play this. Shepard activated the mission brief. 3 teams. Gurus, Miranda, and Jack take the colony's western perimeter, clear any collector forces and secure escape routes. Mordin and I take the central hub, access their computers, find out exactly what happened. Storm and Jean take the processing center where the collectors would have concentrated their harvest. You're putting both Omega-level assets in the same location, Miranda protested. If they're overwhelmed. They won't be, Shepard interrupted. Because they work together. Storm grounds Jean when the Phoenix pulls too hard. Jean's telepathy gives Storm tactical awareness no sensor can match. They're more effective together than separated. She looked at the 2 mutants. Just, try not to level the entire colony. We need evidence. Understood, Storm said. The shuttle descent was tense. Through the viewport, Freedom's progress looked normal at first glance, prefab buildings arranged in orderly rows, agricultural domes gleaming in the weak sunlight of the system's distant star. But as they got closer, Storm's weather sense screamed warnings. The atmospheric patterns were wrong. Too still. Too dead. No wind, she murmured. No natural air circulation at all. The weather here is frozen. Collectors have stasis technology, Mordin explained from the cockpit. Temporal suspension fields. Used to paralyze victims before harvest. Possible they froze atmospheric movement to prevent environmental interference. That's terrifying, Jean said. Imagine being conscious but unable to move, unable to breathe, while they process you. Don't have to imagine, Jack muttered. Cerberus did similar shit. Different tech, same nightmare. The shuttle touched down in the central plaza. The team disembarked weapons ready, but Freedom's progress was silent. Not the peaceful silence of an empty place, the oppressive silence of something waiting. Storm tested her powers immediately, calling a breeze that should have been simple. The air resisted, sluggish and unwilling. Whatever the collectors had done to the atmosphere, it was still affecting her abilities. Reduced to about 60% capacity, she reported. Aurora can function, but weather manipulation will be limited. I'm reading them, Jean said, her eyes distant. Collector minds. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. They're underground, the processing center has sublevels we didn't see in the schematics. And, she paused, face paling. There are still colonists alive. In stasis. Conscious but paralyzed. They're terrified, Shepard. They've been aware for days while the collectors. Then we get them out, Shepard said flatly. Teams, move out. Comm check every 5 minutes. And remember, this is a trap. Stay alert. Storm and Jean moved through the empty streets toward the processing center. Their footsteps echoed wrong, sounds dampened by the unnatural stillness. Jean's telepathy painted pictures that made Storm's blood run cold, flashes of seeker swarms descending, people frozen mid-scream, collectors harvesting paralyzed victims with clinical efficiency. How many alive? Storm asked quietly. Maybe 200. The rest, Jean's voice cracked. The rest were already processed. Reduced to genetic material. Harbinger wanted test subjects. Wanted to understand how human neural patterns might interface with Reaper technology. They're making a human Reaper, Storm breathed. Just like Cerberus feared. Worse. They're making a Reaper that can interface with organic consciousness, something that can indoctrinate more effectively, control more completely. Jean's phoenix flames flickered brighter. The collectors aren't just harvesting humans. They're evolving their methodology. They reached the processing center, a large industrial building that should have housed farming equipment. The doors had been ripped open from the inside, metal twisted like foil. Inside, the temperature dropped 20 degrees. Storm called lightning to illuminate the darkness. What the light revealed made even her, veteran of countless horrors, hesitate. The processing center had been converted into a nightmare factory. Colonists hung suspended in stasis fields, their bodies encased in amber light, eyes wide with terror. Tubes connected them to massive organic-looking machinery, collector biotechnology interfacing with human bodies, extracting something Storm couldn't identify. And moving between the suspended victims, tending the machinery with horrible efficiency, were dozens of collectors. Assuming direct control. The voice echoed from every collector simultaneously. Eyes blazed yellow as Harbinger possessed not one drone, but 20. They turned as one to face Storm and Jean, movements synchronized with disturbing precision. Phoenix entity. You have been analyzed. Quantified. Your power source incompatible with mass effect physics. Therefore impossible. Yet you exist. Explain. Jean felt the weight of Harbinger's intelligence pressing against her mind, not trying to indoctrinate, but to understand. The Reaper wanted to comprehend how the Phoenix defied its calculations, violated its perfect models of reality. I don't answer to machines, Jean said, and let the Phoenix fire build. Incorrect. You are biological organism hosting extra-dimensional energy pattern. You will be preserved. Studied. Integrated into Reaper consciousness. Your pattern will perfect the cycle. The possessed collectors opened fire simultaneously. Particle beams converged on Jean from multiple angles, a coordinated strike designed to overwhelm kinetic barriers through sheer volume. Storm moved faster. Lightning erupted from her hands in a cascading net, intercepting the particle beams mid-flight. The energy clash created explosive feedback that sent several collectors tumbling backward. But the possessed drones simply stood, undamaged, and fired again. Weather manipulation insufficient. Electrical generation limited by atmospheric stasis. You cannot protect Phoenix entity indefinitely. Watch me, Storm snarled. She reached deeper into her power, calling not just lightning but fundamental atmospheric pressure. The frozen air resisted, but Storm was an Omega-level mutant. She'd commanded hurricanes, redirected tornadoes, pulled lightning from clear skies. She would not be denied by collector technology. The atmosphere began to move. Slowly at first, then faster. Wind howled through the processing center as Storm shattered the stasis fields through brute force, her will overriding Reaper technology through sheer power. Pressure differentials created localized storms. Temperature fluctuations spawned miniature cyclones. The possessed collectors staggered as environmental chaos disrupted their coordination. Now, Jean Grey released the Phoenix. Not wildly, not desperately, but with purpose. 5 days of Aethyta's training had taught her to channel rather than suppress, to direct rather than simply unleash. The cosmic fire erupted from her body in controlled streams, targeted, precise, devastating. Phoenix flames washed over the possessed collectors. But Jean didn't just burn them. She transformed them. The Reaper technology that had converted Protheans into collectors reversed, organic tissue regenerating, synthetic components breaking down. For a brief moment, Storm saw flashes of what the collectors had been, Prothean faces, confused and terrified, freed from 50,000 years of slavery. Then the transformation completed, and the bodies collapsed. Not dead, returned to what they should have been, what the Reapers had stolen from them. Impossible, Harbinger's voice echoed from deeper in the facility. Phoenix Force reversing Reaper conversion process. Undoing perfection. Unacceptable. The Phoenix represents life, Jean said, her voice carrying cosmic resonance. Real life, not your perversion of it. You preserve by destroying. The Phoenix destroys to create anew. We're opposites, Harbinger. And I will not let you harvest these people. She moved through the processing center like a force of nature, Phoenix flames cascading over suspended colonists. The stasis field shattered. The harvesting tubes disintegrated. 200 paralyzed victims gasped their first free breaths in days as Jean systematically dismantled every piece of Reaper technology in the facility. Storm provided cover, her weather manipulation creating zones of protection around the freed colonists. Lightning struck any collector drone that attempted to interfere. Wind barriers deflected particle beams. She was operating at reduced capacity, struggling against the atmospheric stasis, but she held the line. Shepard, we've freed the colonists, Storm transmitted. But Harbinger's here. Full manifestation, not just possession. We need evac now. On our way, Shepard responded. Hold position. The floor exploded upward. What emerged was nightmare-given form, a collector ship's processing core, animated and mobile, towering 15 feet high. Organic and synthetic elements merged into something that shouldn't exist, controlled directly by Harbinger's consciousness. It had no face, but Storm felt its attention like physical weight as it focused on Jean. Phoenix entity will be acquired. Resistance is inefficient. The core opened fire with weapons Storm didn't recognize, beams that seemed to unravel matter at the quantum level, shells that detonated into temporal distortion fields. Jean's kinetic barriers flared and died instantly. Storm's lightning couldn't reach through the temporal distortions. Jean, fall back. Storm screamed. No, Jean's voice was calm, centered, controlled. The Phoenix Force erupted at full power, not the desperate unleashing of Omega, but purposeful manifestation. Cosmic fire met Reaper technology in a clash that shook the building's foundations. Storm watched in awe as Jean Grey, tiny, fragile human hosting a cosmic entity, went one-on-one against Harbinger's mobile core. Phoenix flames burned through temporal distortions, reconstructed matter that the quantum beams tried to unmake, transformed Reaper shells into harmless energy that dissipated into heat and light. You adapt, Harbinger observed. Phoenix Force learning. Evolving. This explains anomaly. You are not static power. You are dynamic system. Unprecedented. And you're afraid of that, Jean said, pressing the attack. You can't calculate dynamic systems. Can't predict evolution. That's why the cycles fail sometimes, because organic life adapts in ways your perfect models can't account for. Incorrect. Cycles have never failed. All advanced civilizations harvested. Preserved. Perfected. Except the ones that escaped your notice. Except the variations you couldn't predict. Jean's eyes blazed with Phoenix fire and human determination. You're not perfect, Harbinger. You're just old. And old systems eventually become obsolete. The processing core convulsed as Phoenix Flames found its power source, some hybrid of Reaper technology and organic processing. Jean didn't destroy it. She transformed it. Broke it down to base components and rebuilt it into something that couldn't sustain Harbinger's consciousness. The yellow glow faded from the core's sensors. Its weapons powered down. The vast intelligence that had possessed it withdrew, retreating to whatever distant location the real Harbinger occupied. But before it left completely, Harbinger's voice echoed one final time. Phoenix entity represents unacceptable variable. Cycle must account for your existence. When harvest begins, you will be first priority. Your transformation will perfect Reaper evolution. This is inevitable. Then silence. Jean collapsed immediately, the Phoenix fire guttering out. Storm caught her before she hit the ground, supporting her friend's weight as exhaustion finally overwhelmed control. "I've got you," Storm murmured. "You did it. You saved them." Around them, freed colonists were crying, embracing, trying to process what had happened. Shepard's team arrived seconds later, securing the area, providing medical attention, organizing evacuation. Shepard approached Storm and Jean, her expression unreadable. "That was terrifying," Storm suggested. "Apocalyptic? Proof that Jean's too dangerous to live." "Heroic," Shepard corrected. "You two just reversed Reaper conversion, freed 200 people, and forced Harbinger to retreat." "That's," she paused, searching for words. "That's the kind of thing legends are made of. Songs get written about victories like this." "Or horror stories," Jean whispered, barely conscious. "Did you see what I did? I didn't just burn that core, I rewrote it at the molecular level." "Ororo, the Phoenix is adapting faster than Mordin predicted. Full power might come sooner than 2 weeks. Then we'll be ready," Storm said firmly. "You proved today that Aethyta's training worked. You maintained control even against direct Harbinger manifestation." "Barely." Jean's voice was fading. "Next time might be different. Next time, I might not be able to stop." She fell unconscious, leaving the sentence unfinished. Storm held her friend as the Normandy's shuttle landed to evacuate survivors, as Shepard coordinated with Alliance forces, as the freed colonists of Freedom's Progress began the long process of recovery. But Storm's mind was elsewhere, replaying Harbinger's final words. The Reapers had noticed the Phoenix force. Identified it as a threat. When the harvest began, when the full Reaper fleet returned to the galaxy, Jean would be their first target. And Storm knew with terrible certainty that the coming confrontation would determine more than just Jean Grey's fate. It would determine whether the Phoenix Force became the galaxy's salvation or its ultimate apocalypse. The elusive man's hologram materialized in the Normandy's calm room with unusual urgency. His normally controlled expression showed something Storm had never seen before, genuine concern. "Commander Shepard. We have a problem." Shepard, Storm, and Miranda stood before the display. Jean was still in medical, recovering from Freedom's Progress. Mordin was monitoring her constantly. The Phoenix Force's adaptation rate had accelerated dramatically after the confrontation with Harbinger. "What kind of problem?" Shepard asked. The elusive man took a long drag from his cigarette. "Harbinger didn't retreat from Freedom's Progress. It withdrew to reassess. And now we know what it's planning." He gestured, and the hologram shifted to show star charts. Collector fleet movements over the past 72 hours. They're not raiding colonies anymore. They're converging. On what? Miranda demanded. On the location we've been hunting for months. The Collector base. The star chart zoomed into the galactic core, past the Omega, for relay, into uncharted space where no Council ship had ever returned from. Harbinger is calling in every Collector ship. Every resource. Because it's accelerating the human Reaper's construction. Storm felt ice settle in her stomach. Because of Jean. Because the Phoenix Force represents a variable they can't predict or control, the elusive man confirmed. Standard Reaper doctrine is methodical, patient, they work on timescales spanning millennia. But you've introduced chaos into their perfect calculations. They're rushing the harvest, trying to complete the human Reaper before the Phoenix becomes too powerful to contain. How long do we have? Shepard asked. Days. Maybe a week. The elusive man's glowing eyes fixed on Storm. The human Reaper will be massive, the core of a new capital ship, designed to indoctrinate and harvest more efficiently than any previous model. If the collectors complete it, they'll have a weapon specifically designed to counter Phoenix Force manifestations. They're building a Reaper to kill Jean, Storm said flatly. To control her. To harvest the Phoenix Force and integrate it into Reaper consciousness. The elusive man leaned forward. Which means we're out of time. The Normandy goes through the Omega-4 relay. We hit the collector base before they finish construction. We destroy the human Reaper, rescue any surviving colonists, and eliminate the collector threat permanently. That's a suicide mission, Miranda breathed. No ship has ever returned from beyond the Omega-4 relay. We don't have the technology, the firepower. We have the IFF. The elusive man smiled slightly. Cerberus recovered a Reaper IFF from a derelict vessel. It'll let us pass through the relay safely and navigate collector space. Combined with the Normandy's stealth systems and 2 Omega-level human assets, he looked at Storm. We have a chance. Slim, but real. Shepard was already calculating. We'll need a full crew. Every specialist we can recruit. This isn't just a strike, it's an assault on the collector's home base. Agreed. Which is why I'm authorizing full Cerberus support. Weapons, armor, upgrades, whatever you need. The elusive man's expression turned grave. But Commander, you need to understand what you're facing. The human Reaper isn't just a weapon. It's the Collector's attempt to create a new form of Reaper, one that combines organic adaptability with synthetic perfection. If Harbinger succeeds in harvesting the Phoenix Force during this confrontation. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Storm turned to Shepard. Jean needs to be part of this. If the Collectors built a Reaper specifically to counter her powers, she's the one they'll target. We can't leave her behind. She's barely conscious, Miranda protested. The Phoenix Force is still adapting. Morden's projections show she'll hit full power in 72 hours. If we take her into the Collector base before she's stabilized. Then we have 72 hours to prepare, Storm interrupted. Jean will be ready. She has to be. Jean woke to find half the Normandy's crew in the medbay. Shepard, Storm, Cerberus, Miranda, Morden, Jack, even Joker had left the cockpit to be present. Did someone die? Jean asked weakly. Not yet, Shepard said. But we need to talk about what comes next. They explained everything, the Collector base, the human Reaper, Harbinger's acceleration, the 72-hour timeline. Jean listened in silence, feeling the Phoenix Force stir hungrily at the prospect of confrontation. They're building a Reaper to fight me, she said when they finished. To harvest you, Storm corrected. There's a difference. Is there? Jean looked at her hands, where Phoenix flames danced involuntarily. The Reapers preserve life through destruction. The Phoenix transforms life through fire. Maybe we're not as different as we want to believe. That's bullshit, Jack said bluntly. Reapers are machines following programming. You're human making choices. Huge fucking difference. Jack's right, Morden added. Reapers operate on certainty, calculated outcomes, predetermined results. Phoenix Force represents chaos, change, possibility. Fundamentally incompatible paradigms. Why Harbinger fears you? I don't know if fear is what I'm sensing, Jean said slowly. She'd been feeling Harbinger's attention constantly since Freedom's progress, that cold intelligence studying her, calculating, adapting. It's more like hunger. Recognition. The Reapers see the Phoenix as something they want to understand. To consume and integrate. Then we don't let them, Shepard said firmly. The Normandy goes through the Omega for relay in 72 hours. Full assault on the Collector base. We destroy the human Reaper, rescue any colonists, and eliminate the Collector threat. Jean, I need to know, can you fight? Will you be stable enough to face Harbinger directly? Jean closed her eyes, feeling the Phoenix force coiled within her consciousness. It was stronger now, fully adapted to mass effect physics, no longer hampered by element zero interference. In 72 hours it would reach complete manifestation, 100% power in a galaxy it finally understood how to manipulate. The temptation was overwhelming. She could feel the Phoenix's certainty, that with full power, she could end the Collectors, destroy Harbinger, burn away every threat to the galaxy. All she had to do was let go. Stop fighting. Let the Phoenix take control and handle everything. But that wasn't control. That was surrender. I'll be ready, Jean said, opening her eyes. But Shepard, you need to understand what you're asking. The Phoenix at full power. I've held it before, but never in combat against something as intelligent as a Reaper. If I lose control in the middle of the Collector base, Storm will pull you back, Shepard said. The same way she always has. And if she can't, the rest of us will. She looked around at the assembled crew. That's what teams are for. Nobody fights alone. Damn right, Gurus rumbled. Besides, we've seen what you can do when you're in control. You reversed Reaper conversion at Freedom's progress. Saved 200 people. That's not a monster, that's a hero. Jean felt tears prick her eyes. These people barely knew her, came from a reality with different rules and different dangers. But they were offering trust, acceptance, the kind of support the X-Men had always provided. Thank you, she whispered. Save it for after we survive, Jack said. Right now, we need to prep. Psychic girl, you and I are doing mental exercises, building contingencies for if you start losing control. Weather Witch, you're working with Gurus on electrical weapon systems, figure out if you can juice our guns with your powers. Everyone else, standard pre-mission prep. As the crew dispersed to their tasks, Storm remained beside Jean's bed. Are you truly ready for this? Storm asked quietly. I won't judge if you're not. The Phoenix at full power is something you've avoided for years. I know. Jean looked out the medbay viewport at the stars streaming past. But Aurora, I've been thinking about what Aethyta taught me. About integration versus suppression. Maybe I've been approaching this wrong all along. What do you mean? The X-Men always taught acceptance. Embracing our mutations instead of hiding them. But I've spent years treating the Phoenix like a disease, something to be contained, suppressed, feared. Jean's voice grew stronger. What if instead I accepted it as part of who I am? Not Jean Grey fighting the Phoenix Force. Just Jean Grey, period. Mutant and cosmic entity and human woman all at once. Storm smiled. That sounds like something Charles would say. He'd also tell me I'm being recklessly idealistic and rushing into danger without proper preparation, Jean added wryly. And then he'd dive in right beside you, telepathy blazing. Storm took Jean's hand. Whatever happens in that base, whatever the Phoenix becomes at full power, you're not alone. I'll be there. And if you need me to shock sense back into you one more time, I will. As many times as it takes. I'm counting on it. The 72 hours passed in a blur of preparation. The Normandy's armory became a workshop of controlled chaos as Storm and Gurus developed lightning rounds, specialized ammunition that Storm could charge with electrical energy mid-combat, effectively turning standard mass accelerator weapons into Omega-level capacitors. Mordin created specialized stims designed to help Jean maintain metabolic stability when the Phoenix burned hottest. Jack drilled Jean in meditation techniques that could be executed mid-combat, mental anchors she could grab when chaos threatened control. Miranda coordinated intelligence gathering, pulling every piece of Cerberus data on the collector base. The schematics were incomplete, much of the structure was organic, grown rather than built, responding to collector needs rather than following standard architectural patterns. But they identified key targets: the main processing center where colonists were held, the Human Reaper construction chamber, and deep in the base's core, what Cerberus analysts called the throne room, where Harbinger maintained its primary connection to the Collector General. Shepard assembled the strike team carefully. Storm and Jean were essential, their powers represented the only real counter to Reaper technology the galaxy had seen. Gurus provided long-range support and tactical coordination. Miranda brought biotic power and technical expertise. Jack added raw destructive potential and understanding of what the collectors had done to their victims. Mordin's knowledge of genetics and synthetic biology might prove crucial if they encountered the Human Reaper mid-construction. On the final night before the mission, Jean stood on the observation deck watching the Omega Nebula approach. The swirling purple clouds hid the Omega, for relay, and beyond it, the collector base where 50,000 abducted colonists awaited rescue or death. The door opened. Storm entered, followed by an unexpected visitor, Matriarch Aethyta. "Figured you could use one last lesson before you do something catastrophically stupid," Aethyta said without preamble. She pulled up a holographic display showing neural patterns, Jean's brain activity mapped over time. "This is you at Omega. Unstable, fighting the Phoenix, barely maintaining control." The display shifted. "This is you at Freedom's Progress after my training. Better integration, stronger mental architecture, but still treating the Phoenix as separate entity." One more shift. "And this is projection of you at full power. Notice the pattern?" Jean studied the hologram. At full manifestation, her neural activity and the Phoenix's energy signature would overlap completely, indistinguishable from each other. Not Jean Grey hosting the Phoenix Force. Not two beings sharing one body. Just, one consciousness. One identity. "I'll lose myself," Jean breathed. "Or find yourself," Aethyta corrected. "Depends on perspective. Aseri who fully integrate with bonded entities don't lose identity, they transcend limited self-conception. Become something more than either component alone. Greater than sum of parts. That's terrifying. Yes. Also liberating." Aethyta's expression softened fractionally. "Listen, psychic girl. I've lived nearly 1,000 years. Seen civilizations rise and fall, watched species evolve and go extinct. And I've learned one truth that applies across all contexts: power without identity is chaos. But identity that accepts power becomes transformation." "I don't understand," Jean said. "You will. When the Phoenix reaches full manifestation, you'll face a choice. You can fight to remain purely Jean Grey, human, limited, separate from cosmic fire. Or you can accept transformation, become Jean Grey who is the Phoenix, not just hosts it. Integrated identity. Transcendent self." Storm stepped forward. "And if she makes that choice? Tomorrow, the Phoenix would burn at full power for the first time in this galaxy. Tomorrow, she would face Harbinger directly, consciousness against consciousness, will against ancient intelligence. Tomorrow, she would either prove that organic evolution could triumph over synthetic perfection, or become the weapon the Reapers had been building her into all along. But tonight, she was just Jean Grey. Mutant. X-Man, friend. And that was enough. Storm's hand found hers in the darkness. "Whatever happens tomorrow, we face it together," Jean finished. The way we always have. Through the viewport, the Omega-4 relay pulsed with barely contained energy. And in the depths of the galactic core, Harbinger waited. The cycle was about to learn what happened when chaos met order, when evolution faced perfection, when the Phoenix rose against the machines that believed they'd calculated every possibility. The galaxy would never be the same. The Omega-4 relay activated with forces that would have torn apart any ship without a Reaper IFF. Space-time folded in ways that violated every principle Storm thought she understood about physics. For 3 seconds that felt like eternity, the Normandy existed in a state between dimensions, and Jean felt the Phoenix force sing with recognition. This was closer to home, to the cosmic chaos between realities where the Phoenix naturally dwelled. Then they were through. The galactic core stretched before them, a maelstrom of stellar formation, dying stars, and gravitational anomalies that made navigation nearly impossible. And floating in the heart of that chaos, powered by the energy of collapsing matter itself, was the collector base. It looked like a massive insect hive built from metal and organic tissue, kilometers across and pulsing with sickly bioluminescence. Hundreds of collector ships orbited it like antibodies protecting a diseased heart. And at its center, visible through massive transparent sections of the structure, was something that made even Storm, who'd faced sentinels, gods, and cosmic entities, feel genuine horror. The human Reaper. It was incomplete, only the upper torso and head constructed, but already massive, 50 meters tall, built from the processed remains of tens of thousands of humans. Its skeletal frame glowed with Reaper technology, and even from this distance, Jean could feel its psychic weight. Harbinger had poured consciousness into this construct, making it more than just another Reaper. This was designed specifically to counter the Phoenix Force, a weapon built from humanity's collective suffering, aimed at humanity's greatest defender. Holy shit, Joker breathed from the cockpit. That thing's made of people. Estimate 50,000 colonists processed into genetic material, Morden said, his voice unusually somber. Entire populations reduced to base components. Reaper efficiency at its worst. Then we tear it apart, Shepard said flatly. Joker, get us into the debris field. We're going in quiet, stealth systems maximum. Ground team, suit up. We've got one shot at this. The Normandy descended through the chaos of destroyed ships and stellar debris, the remains of every vessel that had tried to pass the Omega-4 relay without Reaper authorization. The stealth systems held, masking their approach as they settled onto a docking platform that had once been a cargo freighter, now fused into the collector base's organic structure. The assault team assembled in the airlock. Storm wore Cerberus armor modified with conductive threading that would channel her electricity more efficiently. Jean had refused armor entirely, the Phoenix Force would burn through it anyway. Instead, she wore simple combat fatigues, her only concession to protection being kinetic barriers that Morden had modified to resonate with Phoenix energy rather than fight against it. Remember the plan, Shepard said, checking her rifle one final time. Miranda's team secures the colonist holding area and begins evacuation. Gurus and Morden target the base's power systems, shut down their weapons, create chaos. Storm, Jean, and I go straight for the human Reaper. We destroy it before Harbinger can complete construction. And if we encounter Harbinger directly? Miranda asked. Then Jean and I handle it, Storm said firmly. Everyone else falls back and evacuates with the colonists. This is our fight. The airlock opened onto a nightmare. The collector base's interior was a fusion of technology and biology that made Storm's skin crawl. Walls pulsed with organic circulation systems. The floor beneath their feet was warm, yielding, walking on living tissue. And everywhere, suspended in transparent pods, were humans. Thousands of them, still alive but paralyzed, awaiting processing. Jean's telepathy opened to the screaming chorus of their minds, terror, despair, prayers that wouldn't be answered, final thoughts of loved ones they'd never see again. The psychic weight would have crushed most telepaths. Jean bore it, let it flow through the channels Aethyta had taught her, and used it to fuel her determination. "Stay focused," Storm murmured, sensing Jean struggle through their link. "We're here now. We'll save them." They moved through the base's corridors with practiced efficiency. Collector drones appeared sporadically, but the assault team cut them down before they could raise alarms. Burris's sniper rifle took heads off at impossible distances. Jack's biotics crushed entire groups into singularities. Miranda's tech expertise disabled security systems before they could activate. But Storm felt it building, that sense of wrongness that came before disasters. The collectors weren't fighting back. They were hurting the team, guiding them deeper into the base toward the human Reaper's construction chamber. "It's a trap," she said suddenly. "Shepard, they're letting us through." "I know," Shepard replied grimly. "But we're committed. If we turn back now, they complete the Reaper and use it to harvest every human colony in the Terminus systems. We push forward." They reached the construction chamber, a vast space open to the void, held together by mass effect fields that generated artificial gravity. And there, suspended in energy scaffolding, was the human Reaper. It was even more horrifying up close. Storm could see individual faces in its structure, colonists she might have passed on the street, families torn apart, children who would never grow up. All of them processed, reduced to genetic material, transformed into the ultimate expression of Reaper philosophy, life preserved through death, organic potential perfected through synthetic conversion. "Phoenix entity has arrived." Harbinger's voice didn't come from any speaker. It came from the human Reaper itself. The construct's eyes, massive, glowing with yellow fire, opened. And Storm felt the weight of intelligence that had existed for millions of years, that had harvested countless civilizations, that had perfected the art of converting organic life into immortal technology. The human Reaper moved. It shouldn't have been possible. The construct was incomplete, barely more than torso and head, but Harbinger's direct control animated it anyway. Mass effect fields generated by Reaper technology lifted it from its scaffolding. Weapons systems built into its skeletal structure powered on, particle beams, kinetic barriers, technology salvaged from 1,000 harvested species. "Fall back!" Shepard screamed, firing her rifle. The shots ricocheted off kinetic barriers harmlessly. "It's not supposed to be operational yet." Parameters changed when Phoenix entity entered Galaxy. Completion timeline accelerated. This Reaper now serves singular purpose, your acquisition. The human Reaper's hand, each finger the size of a person, reached toward Jean. Storm reacted instinctively, calling lightning that struck the construct with megawatt fury. The Reaper barely noticed, kinetic barriers absorbing the electrical discharge and shunting it to ground. Weather manipulation insufficient. Electrical attack calculated. Barriers adapted. "You cannot protect Phoenix entity." "Watch me try," Storm snarled, and reached deeper into her power than she'd ever gone in this galaxy. She called the storm itself. Not the artificial weather of climate-controlled stations or terraformed worlds, but primal atmospheric fury, the kind that had carved canyons on Earth, that had preceded civilization, that represented nature's indiscriminate power. The construction chamber's open void provided no resistance. Storm pulled hydrogen from the stellar winds, created pressure differentials across hundreds of kilometers, and birthed a hurricane in space itself. Lightning cascaded in chains across the human Reaper's structure. Wind speeds that exceeded anything possible in atmosphere battered its kinetic barriers. Temperature fluctuations created thermal stress that made metal scream and organic tissue rupture. But it wasn't enough. The human Reaper weathered the storm, Harbinger's intelligence compensating for each attack vector, adapting its barriers, shunting energy through pathways that Storm couldn't predict. For every megawatt she poured into the assault, the Reaper dispersed or absorbed it. Omega-level mutant power impressive but quantifiable. Phoenix entity remains primary target. The Reaper's weapons fired, not at Storm, but at the scaffolding around them. The structure collapsed, sending the assault team tumbling in the artificial gravity. Shepard managed to maglock to a surface. Gurus caught Miranda mid-fall. But Jean was thrown directly toward the human Reaper's outstretched hand. "Jean!" Storm screamed. Time seemed to slow. Storm watched her oldest friend tumble through the void toward a construct built specifically to contain her, to harvest the Phoenix Force and integrate it into Reaper consciousness. She watched Jean's eyes widen with realization, saw the instant Jean understood what would happen if Harbinger succeeded. The Reapers would gain the Phoenix's power. The ability to transform matter, to resurrect the dead, to manipulate reality at quantum levels. They would become more than just immortal machines harvesting organic life. They would become gods, eternal, unstoppable, perfect fusion of synthetic calculation and cosmic chaos. The galaxy would burn forever. Jean Grey made her choice. She stopped fighting the Phoenix Force. Not surrender, acceptance. Integration. Transformation. Everything Aethyta had tried to teach her, everything Storm had supported her toward, everything Jean had spent years avoiding because she feared losing herself. In that moment, falling toward the human Reaper's grasp, Jean Grey let go of the fear and embraced what she truly was. Mutant. Telepath. Human woman who loved her friends and fought for those who couldn't fight for themselves. And the Phoenix. The cosmic entity erupted from Jean's body in a pillar of fire that reached from the collector base to the stellar maelstrom beyond. But this wasn't the desperate, barely controlled manifestation of Omega or Freedom's progress. This was the Phoenix Force at full power, fully integrated with Jean Grey's consciousness, wielded with purpose and precision. Storm watched in awe as Jean transformed. Her body became living flame, matter and energy existing in superposition. Her eyes blazed with cosmic fire but remained Jean's eyes, aware, compassionate, human despite the godlike power flowing through her. And when she spoke, her voice carried both human warmth and cosmic resonance. "No, Harbinger. You don't get to harvest me. You don't get to pervert what the Phoenix represents. Life isn't something to be preserved in static perfection." Jean's flames intensified. Life is chaos. Evolution. Constant change and transformation. Everything you Reapers fear, everything you try to eliminate through your cycles. She reached out with telekinesis backed by cosmic power. The human Reaper, massive, shielded by Reaper technology, animated by Harbinger's will, simply stopped. Frozen in space as Jean's power overrode mass effect fields, negated kinetic barriers, reached past synthetic defenses to touch the organic material at the construct's core. These were people, Jean said, and Storm heard grief in that cosmic voice. Families, dreamers, children who deserved to grow old. You stole their futures. Reduced them to components. Called it preservation. The Phoenix fire flowed into the human Reaper, and Storm watched impossible transformation occur. The processed genetic material that formed the construct structure began to regenerate. Not back to human form, too much damage, to complete the conversion, but into something new. Organic tissue that pulsed with life rather than Reaper control. Neural pathways that fired independently, thinking thoughts that weren't Harbinger's calculations. You cannot reverse Reaper perfection, Harbinger roared. Organic life harvested cannot be restored. Wrong, Jean said simply. The Phoenix represents rebirth. Life from death. New possibilities from old patterns. She looked directly at the human Reaper's glowing eyes, directly at Harbinger's consciousness controlling it. You chose the wrong target, Harbinger. The Phoenix doesn't destroy civilizations. It transforms them into something new. Something you can never understand or control. The human Reaper convulsed as transformation accelerated. Its structure began breaking down, not into death, but into base organic material that the Phoenix could rebuild into something unprecedented. For a moment, Storm glimpsed what Jean was creating, not human, not Reaper, but hybrid consciousness, organic and synthetic merged through cosmic fire into life that existed beyond either paradigm. Impossible. Harbinger's voice fractured, losing coherence as its connection to the human Reaper degraded. Phoenix Force creating new form of life. Outside cycle parameters. Unquantifiable. Unacceptable. Get used to disappointment, Jean said, and allowed herself a very human smile. She closed her fist, and the human Reaper shattered. Not exploded, transformed. The construct that had been built from 50,000 harvested colonists broke down into clouds of organic particles, each one carrying a spark of life that the Phoenix had rekindled. They dispersed through the construction chamber like spores, seeking surfaces to take root, places to grow into something new. Storm watched in wonder as the particles touched other collectors, other Reaper technology, and began converting them. Not destroying, but transforming. Synthetic becoming organic. Programmed behavior becoming independent thought. Harbinger's control severing as the entities it had created for millions of years suddenly remembered they had once been something else. Fall back. Shepard screamed, grabbing Storm's arm. The whole base is coming apart. She was right. The transformation cascading from Jean's Phoenix manifestation was spreading faster than anyone could track. Collector drones stopped mid-attack, confused as consciousness returned to minds that had known only Harbinger's commands. The base's organic structure began rejecting its synthetic components, pulsing with new life that couldn't be controlled or predicted. And deep in the galactic core, Storm felt Harbinger's consciousness withdraw completely, retreating from the chaos it couldn't calculate, the transformation it couldn't prevent or understand. But Jean wasn't done. She turned her attention to the pods where surviving colonists remained trapped. Phoenix fire washed over them, not burning, but freeing. Stasis field shattered. Paralysis lifted. 50,000 victims of Reaper harvesting gasped their first free breaths in months as Jean systematically undid every piece of collector technology imprisoning them. Storm, Jean's voice echoed directly in Storm's mind, still Jean despite the cosmic power. Get them out. Get everyone out. I'm going to collapse this base. Not without you. Storm shouted, but Jean was already moving. The Phoenix carried her toward the base's core, the central hub where Harbinger maintained its strongest connection to collector space. Storm watched through the telepathic link as Jean reached the throne room and found the Collector General, the entity through which Harbinger directly controlled all collector operations. Jean didn't kill it. Instead, she showed it truth. The Phoenix opened the General's mind to memories it had lost 50,000 years ago, when it had been Prothean, when it had been organic, when it had loved and hoped and dreamed before the Reapers harvested its entire civilization. And with those memories came choice. The General could remain Harbinger's puppet. Or it could remember what it meant to be alive. It chose life. The psychic scream that followed shook the entire base. Every collector simultaneously rejected Harbinger's control. Millions of possessed entities remembering autonomy, demanding freedom, choosing chaos over perfect order. The cycle had broken. Now, Storm. Jean's voice was urgent. I'm bringing this whole place down before Harbinger can re-establish control. You have to evacuate everyone. Storm didn't hesitate. She rallied Shepard's team, coordinated with Miranda's evacuation efforts, and used her weather control to create pressure differentials that pushed fleeing colonists toward the docking platforms where the Normandy waited. Lightning illuminated escape routes. Wind carried the weak and injured. Ice froze malfunctioning doors open so refugees could pass. 50,000 colonists flooded toward salvation, carried by storm and hope and the impossible reality that someone had come for them. And in the base's heart, Jean Grey burned. The Phoenix Force erupted at full cosmic manifestation, not constrained by human form, not limited by Jean's physical body, but pure transformative fire spreading through every corridor, every chamber, every organic and synthetic component of the collector base. Where it touched, Reaper technology failed. Indoctrination fields collapsed. Conversion chambers broke down into harmless elements. Through their telepathic link, Storm felt Jean's consciousness expanding, becoming more than human, more than Phoenix, something unprecedented that existed in the space between mortal awareness and cosmic entity. "Jean!" Storm sent desperately. "Come back. Don't lose yourself." "I'm not losing myself," Jean replied, and Storm heard joy in that voice. "I'm finding myself. Understanding what Aethyta tried to teach me. I'm not Jean Grey fighting the Phoenix. I'm not the Phoenix possessing Jean. I'm both. I'm more. And Aurora, it's beautiful." "Then come home," Storm pleaded. "Don't sacrifice yourself. Not again." "Who said anything about sacrifice?" Jean laughed, pure, human, joyful despite the cosmic power flowing through her. "I'm the Phoenix, remember? Death is just another beginning. But don't worry, I'm not dying today. I'm just making sure these bastards can never harvest anyone again." The collector base collapsed. Not all at once, but in cascading waves as Jean's Phoenix fire consumed every system, every weapon, every piece of technology that had enabled 50 million years of harvesting. The structure that had processed billions of organic beings into Reaper components simply ceased to exist, transformed into clouds of inert matter and freed consciousness that drifted into the stellar chaos of the galactic core. And from that destruction, a single point of light emerged. Storm watched through the Normandy's viewport as Jean Grey, physical body reconstituted through Phoenix fire, human form restored but changed, glowing with cosmic energy that would never completely fade, flew toward the ship. She moved through vacuum without protection, walked on stellar wind, arrived at the airlock wreathed in flames that burned without consuming. The moment Jean stepped aboard, Storm was there. She grabbed her friend, pulled her close, and for the first time since they'd arrived in this galaxy, allowed herself to cry. "You terrified me," Storm whispered. "I know," Jean replied, holding her tight. "But I'm here. Still me. Just, more." Around them, the Normandy's cargo bay filled with freed colonists, humans who'd spent months in collector stasis, who'd watched their loved ones processed, who'd lost all hope until two mutants from another reality proved that even ancient machine gods could be defeated. Shepard approached, her expression unreadable. "Jean Grey. You just destroyed the primary collector base, freed 50,000 colonists, and severed Harbinger's connection to its entire fleet." She paused. "You also transformed the human Reaper into some kind of new life form that's currently growing in the stellar matter of the galactic core." "I couldn't save the colonists who'd already been processed," Jean said quietly. "But I could give them new existence. Let them become something unprecedented, life that exists beyond organic or synthetic. Evolution the Reapers never calculated. You created a new species," Morden breathed, already pulling up sensor data. "Hybrid consciousness combining organic thought patterns with synthetic capabilities. Not Reaper conversion, genuine merger resulting in novel form of sentience. Unprecedented. Revolutionary. Also possibly terrifying, but absolutely fascinating. The galaxy won't know what to do with you," Miranda said, but there was something like respect in her voice. "The Council will lose their minds. The Asari will have existential crisis. Even Cerberus doesn't have protocols for, human telepath becomes cosmic entity and creates new form of life. Let them figure it out," Shepard said firmly. "Right now, we've got 50,000 people who need medical attention, transport home, and explanations we're not qualified to give. Joker, plot course back through the Omega, for relay. Let's go home." As the Normandy pulled away from the collapsing collector base, Storm stood with Jean at the observation viewport. The stellar chaos of the galactic core blazed before them, and within that fire, barely visible even to Storm's enhanced vision, were shapes. Movement. Consciousness taking form. What will they become? Storm asked. "I don't know," Jean admitted. "That's the beautiful part. The Phoenix gave them life, but what they do with it is their choice." Maybe they'll become something the galaxy needs. Maybe they'll become new problems. But they'll be alive, aware, capable of growth and change. Everything the Reapers tried to eliminate. Harbinger will come for you, Storm said quietly. This isn't over. No, Jean agreed. But we proved something today. The Reapers aren't perfect. Their cycles can be broken. And when they return, really return, with the full fleet, we'll be ready. She looked at Storm. You, me, Shepard's crew, and whatever allies we can gather. Organic chaos against synthetic order. Evolution against stasis. The cycle ends, Storm said. The cycle ends, Jean echoed. And in the depths of dark space, beyond the galaxy's edge, Harbinger recalculated. The Phoenix entity had proven impossible to harvest. Had broken collector operations. Had created new variables outside all predictive models. The harvest would require adjustment. The cycle would need modification. But it would come. It always came. For millions of years, the Reapers had perfected existence through methodical elimination of chaos. One cosmic entity, powerful, unprecedented, dangerous, would not stop the inevitable. Yet for the first time in its existence, Harbinger felt something new. Uncertainty. And uncertainty was the first step toward doubt. The Citadel had changed since Storm and Jean first stood before the Council. News of the Collector base's destruction had spread across every network, every station, every colony in Council space and beyond. 2 human operatives, mutants from another dimension, had accomplished what the combined might of galactic civilization couldn't. They had struck at the heart of Reaper operations and won. The Council chamber was packed. Not just the 3 counselors, but ambassadors from every major species, military commanders, intelligence operatives, even Matriarch Aethyta who stood in the back with her arms crossed and a knowing smile. Jean Grey and Storm stood before them, no longer strangers desperate for acceptance. They stood as equals, warriors who had earned respect through action rather than words. The reports are difficult to accept, Counselor Tevos began, her Aseri composure showing rare cracks. You destroyed a base that has operated for 50,000 years. Freed colonists that intelligence suggested were beyond saving. And, she paused, struggling with the words, created a new form of sentient life from the remains of a Reaper construct. We did what was necessary, Storm said simply. Necessary, Counselor Sparatus repeated, his Turian pragmatism warring with obvious concern. You transformed Reaper technology into organic life. Miss Grey, you manifested power sufficient to collapse an entire military installation. These capabilities exceed anything we've encountered, including Reaper technology itself. Good, Jean said, and allowed a flicker of phoenix fire to dance across her eyes. Because the Reapers are coming. Not just Harbinger and scattered forces. The full fleet. When they arrive, you'll need every advantage you can get. That sounds like a threat, a Solarian ambassador said nervously. It's a promise, Shepard interjected, stepping forward. I've been warning the Council about the Reapers for 2 years. You've dismissed, denied, and delayed. But the Collectors were proof. The human Reaper was proof. And now we have 50,000 colonists who can testify to exactly what the Reapers do to organic life. Counselor Valorn spoke quickly, his Solarian mind calculating implications. Accepting Reaper threat means acknowledging galaxy-wide extinction event. Would require unprecedented cooperation between all species. Council authority would need expansion. Military coordination across Terminus systems and Citadel space. Massive resource allocation. Political upheaval. Yes, Storm said. All of that. Because the alternative is harvesting. Systematic elimination of every advanced civilization. That's the cycle, and we've proven it can be broken. The chamber erupted in debate. Ambassadors argued. Military officials demanded tactical analyses. Intelligence operatives questioned everything. But Storm noticed something important: no one was dismissing them anymore. No one was calling them threats or demanding their containment. Fear had transformed into respect. And respect, however grudging, was foundation for alliance. Admiral Anderson approached them after the council session, his expression carrying rare approval. That was well done. You've given the galaxy hope and a target. The political landscape is shifting. Species that have been rivals for centuries are starting to talk about cooperation. Will it be enough? Jean asked. I don't know, Anderson admitted. But it's more than we had before you arrived. 2 mutants from another dimension, fighting for a galaxy that isn't even your home, he smiled. That's the kind of story that inspires people. Makes them believe impossible things can be accomplished. The Normandy prepared for departure from the Citadel, restocked and refitted after the Collector base assault. But the crew knew this was just the beginning. Harbinger had retreated, not surrendered. The Reapers would come, and when they did, the galaxy needed to be ready. Storm found Jean on the observation deck, their customary meeting place, where conversations happened that couldn't occur anywhere else. Shepard offered us permanent positions on the crew, Storm said. Full integration. Salaries, benefits, the whole package. What did you say? That we'd think about it. Storm moved to stand beside her friend. Jean, I've been thinking about what Aethyta said. About transformation. You're not the same person who arrived in this galaxy 2 months ago. No, Jean agreed. She looked at her hands, where phoenix flames danced lazily, controlled, purposeful, integrated. I'm more now. Jean Grey and the Phoenix Force, truly merged. It doesn't scare me anymore. Doesn't feel like fighting myself. It just is. And the hunger? The drive to consume? Still there. But directed now. The Phoenix wants to transform stagnation into growth, death into rebirth. And this galaxy, Jean gestured at the viewport showing the Citadel's vast structure, this galaxy is full of stagnation. The cycles have repeated for millions of years. The same patterns, the same harvests, the same extinctions. The Reapers represent ultimate stasis masquerading as preservation. And we represent chaos, Storm finished. Evolution, Jean corrected gently. Change. The possibility that things don't have to be the way they've always been. She turned to Storm. Aurora, I don't think we're getting home. Not soon, maybe not ever. The dimensional rift that brought us here was 1 in a billion chance, and I don't have the control to recreate it. Storm had suspected as much. Then we make a life here. Fighting a war that isn't ours, for people we barely know, in a galaxy with completely different rules. Sounds familiar, Storm said with a slight smile. The X-Men have always fought for those who couldn't fight for themselves. Species doesn't matter. Dimension doesn't matter. What matters is standing against genocide, against hatred, against those who would eliminate life because it's different or unpredictable. Charles would say we're being recklessly heroic. And Logan would say we're idiots for volunteering for apocalypse duty, Storm added. But they'd both understand. This is who we are. What we've always been. We're X-Men, Jean. That doesn't change just because we're in a different reality. Jean felt tears prick her eyes, not sadness, but gratitude. She'd been terrified that becoming more than human meant losing herself. But Storm's steady presence, her unwavering friendship, had anchored Jean through transformation. She was changed, yes. More powerful, more cosmic, more aware of existence beyond human perception. But she was still Jean Grey. Still the woman who valued friendship above power. Still the X-Man who would sacrifice everything to protect innocence. Then we stay, Jean said firmly. We help Shepard prepare for the Reapers. We build alliances. And when Harbinger comes back, we'll be ready, Storm finished. Together. The way we've always fought. They stood together on the observation deck as the Normandy undocked from the Citadel. Below them, the massive station teemed with life, Asari and Turians, Solarians and humans, Krogan and Quarians, a dozen species learning to cooperate in the face of extinction. The galaxy didn't know it yet, but it had changed forever. Two mutants from another reality had introduced chaos into ancient calculations. Had proven that the Reaper's perfect cycles could break. Had created new life from the instruments of death. Somewhere in the dark between stars, Harbinger recalculated its projections. The Phoenix entity remained unquantifiable. Storm's Omega-level mutation defied Reaper understanding of human genetics. Together, they represented variables outside 50 million years of accumulated data. But the cycle would continue. The harvest would come. The Reapers had never failed, never been truly stopped, never encountered resistance they couldn't eventually overcome through sheer patience and overwhelming force. Yet doubt lingered. And in the cosmic consciousness that was Harbinger, ancient, immortal, convinced of its own perfection, doubt was the most dangerous infection of all. Jean Grey felt that doubt through the psychic connection they'd forged during combat. She sensed Harbinger's uncertainty, its attempts to recalculate around chaos it couldn't predict. And she smiled. "What are you thinking?" Storm asked. "That the Reapers have spent millions of years trying to perfect existence by eliminating unpredictability. They've created cycles, harvest patterns, calculated outcomes for every possible scenario." Jean's eyes blazed with phoenix fire and human determination. "But they never calculated us. Never predicted that two mutants from another dimension would arrive and refuse to follow their rules. We're the chaos in their perfect equation," Storm said. "No," Jean shook her head. "We're proof that perfect equations don't exist. That life, real, messy, unpredictable organic life, will always find ways to evolve beyond any system designed to contain it. The Reapers preserve by destroying. The Phoenix transforms by burning away the old. We're everything they fear because we represent the truth they've spent eternity denying. Which is that change is inevitable. That static perfection is just another word for death. And that no matter how many cycles they complete, no matter how many civilizations they harvest, life will always find a way to surprise them." Storm smiled. Charles definitely would have said that. Probably while adjusting his glasses and pretending he wasn't being incredibly optimistic. He'd also tell us to be careful, to build support networks, to remember that power without wisdom is just destruction. Jean took Storm's hand. "I'm glad you're here, Aurora. I wouldn't want to face this galaxy with anyone else. We've faced worse together. Sentinels, apocalypse, literal gods. Ancient machine intelligences bent on galactic extinction." Storm's eyes flashed white with electricity. Just another Tuesday for the X-Men. They laughed, genuine, human laughter that echoed through the observation deck. Below them, the galaxy continued its ancient patterns. Species competed and cooperated. Colonies thrived and struggled. Life happened in all its chaotic, unpredictable glory. And in the depths of that chaos, two mutants who'd lost their home had found new purpose. They would stand against the harvest. Would fight for organic evolution against synthetic perfection. Would prove that even 50 million years of calculated genocide could end when faced with determination, friendship, and power wielded with conscience. The cycle would come for them. Harbinger would return. The Reaper's full fleet would arrive bearing extinction. And Jean Grey, mutant, telepath, Phoenix, would be waiting. Not as a weapon. Not as a victim. But as a choice the Reapers had never calculated, someone who could look at cosmic forces and say, no, someone who could stare down immortal machines and insist on the value of mortal, messy, beautifully chaotic organic life. Storm stood beside her, electricity dancing between her fingers. Two X-Men, far from home but never alone. Ready to fight a war for a galaxy that wasn't theirs but deserved defending anyway. Because that's what heroes did. That's what X-Men did. And the galaxy would never be the same. In a hidden laboratory deep in Cerberus space, the elusive man reviewed data from the collector base assault. Genetic samples. Energy readings. Projections of Phoenix Force capabilities at full manifestation. Magnificent, he murmured, cigarette smoke curling in the darkness. Humanity's greatest assets, and they don't even realize what they represent. On his screens, footage played of Jean Grey transforming the human Reaper. Of Storm calling hurricanes in vacuum. Of two women wielding power sufficient to reshape reality itself. The Reapers were coming. But humanity, augmented by Omega-level mutants from another dimension, might finally stand as equals to the Council races. Might survive the harvest. Might even transcend the cycle entirely. All it required was proper application of unprecedented resources. The elusive man smiled and began drafting new operational parameters. The game had changed. And he intended to win.